And I said, no, I wasn't coming to ask you questions about Michael's death. Like, that just happened. Like, why would I? And I said, I'm here for like support, friend support. You know, you asked me to meet you for lunch, so I'm gonna, I'm here for you as a friend. She starts talking about like the events of the hospital. He took these supplements, overdosed on them. And randomly, she says, bodybuilders take insulin.
Welcome to Creepalachia. The studio is packed today. In honor of Valentine's Day coming up, we thought how heartwarming would it be to have the Hamiltons, John and Stephanie, in to tell us their love stories. And also maybe some, Natalie Cochran trial stuff. And because of that, we have Josie Moore joining us to keep us in line. But thank you for joining us. Appreciate y'all being here. So nice to finally meet you in person. They answered the door and I was like, I feel like I know you guys. So let's go with, how'd y'all meet? Who wants to go first? When did this love connection happen?
We met about 22 years ago through a friend.
Through a mutual friend.
Really? Oh, so did y'all grow up around here or?
No.
Oh, really?
I grew up in Great Mare County in Roncevert.
And I grew up at Sylvester in Boone County.
Nice. Well, cool. How'd y'all end up in this region?
It's just work for me.
I had graduated from PA school here in Beckley, and I stayed here. So.
Very cool. And so you're a trooper, John?
Yes.
So when did you decide to dive into that line of work? How old were you?
I was in my early 20s there. I also worked for Beckley PD back in the late 90s. And so then I've been with the state police for going on 24 years.
Oh, cool. Do you work like night shift or day shift, or does it range?
Days and a couple nights. Good
deal. In the health field, Stephanie, why did you, what was your original plan?
I always was interested in medical and health, and I wanted to help people. That I cared about people and wanted to help people. That was just always my calling. And so I was going to go to medical school. That was always my goal. And I was doing shadowing hours that you have to have. And a physician, my family physician at home, he, recommended, he was like, if I were you, I would go to PA school because, it's a lot better. He said, don't go. So then I was like, what's a PA? I'd never heard of that before, had one, and started looking into it. So applied. I was going to Concord at the time and applied to Beckley and got in and started from there.
How cool. So, do you love practicing medicine?
I do.
What do you love about it?
I love helping people, and I love the interaction. I always like learning new stuff. I like my job. I like my coworkers. We have a good group and we have fun. So if you can't have fun at your job, then it's not worth it.
Did you have anyone else in your family that was in the medical field at all, or were you the first one?
So my mom, she worked at the hospital, and she worked in pathology.
Oh, okay.
In labs. So I grew up kind of like in that exposure and have nurses in my family. Mm-hmm. And so, I just kind of was drawn to that. I was always kind of a biology and math and science nerd. So that was kind of my path. So
good deal. Well, thank y'all for coming in today. So we're going to kind of step way back. There's no objections happening today, which is going to be very nice. Just kind of have a conversation and get into as many details as we possibly can. So you all have 2 kids?
Yes.
Okay. And then eventually they wanted to play football.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
And that's kind of where you all established a relationship with the Cochrans. Is that right?
So, yeah, Hunter joined the football league about 2015.
Yeah.
And Mike was not his coach at that point. He had a different set of coaches. But sometimes he really dove into football. And sometimes he would want to go get like extra sessions. Like if his team had canceled that day, he still wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would take him to the field, and Mike's team was usually practicing. And I asked, Mike one day, I was like, he wants to do an extra session. Their team canceled. So, and he was always very like, welcoming to Hunter to practice with them. And he was always very good. And that was one of Hunter's best. That was one of his best coaches that he did. Like there was several coaches in the league, but there was just a couple that he really, you connect with, and they kind of take you under their wing and really want to help you.
Right. And this was in 2015?
Yes. So, and then 2016, the next year, Mike was actually one of his coaches on his team. So,
right. And John, when did you end up, did you introduce yourself to Michael pretty early, or when did you all end up kind of?
It was just kind of everybody being around everybody, doing it football, this and that. And, just everybody's getting to know each other, and, just through the youth football games and all that, all the coaching and the games you go to.
Sure. And eventually, you and Natalie, Stephanie became kind of friends, would you say, and text friends? How close were you all?
Well, so there was a lot of controversy going on in the league and some arguing and things like that. And I remember when we were at a meeting, and Mike, he said to me in the hallway, he was like, I just want to coach the kids. Like, I want all this, crap to go away. And I'm just wanting to coach kids. Like, we need to move on. And I could see like his passion, and I knew in the middle of that controversy, basically his son was what do you say? Like the victim of that. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
He was suffering that. And so Hunter felt bad too, because he could see that too. And so I felt bad for Mike. So like they had started talking. So I kind of reached out trying to reach into them. And then she started texting, and we became friends like that. And we were pretty close. She would text daily and send Bible verses and devotions and stuff like that.
Awesome. Can you pull that mic up to you a little bit, and then the pen too? We can hear it. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry. So y'all start, kind of not necessarily besties, but close to, really close.
Mm-hmm.
What was like your initial, I guess, perception of Natalie? Because I think you described her as like kind of like standoffish.
She was very standoffish. She wouldn't talk to anyone really. And most of the time she would sit in the truck, like at practice and things. And so he was more personable, talking to the parents than she was. And of course, like I said, he just really had a passion for the kids, and you could tell that's what he wanted to do. She purveyed herself to be an introvert, and that's why she didn't like really talk to people. So then when I had reached out, then she texted me and was like, thanks for reaching out. That meant so much. And I don't like to talk to people. And so that was her personality she came across as.
That's interesting, because I just assumed, to sell a couple $1 million worth of nothing, you'd have to be like, hey,
no,
I'm the
it's
extrovert.
not like that at all.
Really? That's interesting. Okay. What does she sound like? I haven't even heard her talk, so I'm
She's
just
pretty
curious.
soft spoken. I mean, I don't know, like I would say like an innocent voice,
Right.
but it's just,
Comes across well spoken,
yeah,
Mhm.
intelligent.
she is intelligent.
Yeah. Oh, very.
Did you guys have a lot to like talk about her being a pharmacist, you being a physician assistant? Like,
I mean, we would share, sometimes I would ask her because, I mean, so yeah, I do disease study
Mhm.
and, see patients and I'm prescribing medications, but a lot of times, like, I reach out to the pharmacist and I'm like, hey, what about this or this? Like,
Mhm.
and so we did share some of that. Like, I would ask her questions about such and such thing or whatever, if she knew anything or had any experience with it. So not like a lot per se, but we
Yeah.
did share some of that. Mainly it was like our conversations were about the kids or,
Mhm.
whatever was going on.
Sure. And the controversy, is that involving the initial investigation that kind of fired this whole thing up? I think let's talk about that a little because there's not really a lot about that.
Well,
So go ahead.
there was
You talking about the football one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
football. Well, because there was football and then there was baseball. So this is the football version
Yeah.
for those out there. We got to clarify. But
What I remember about that is Natalie was accusing several of the parents there of taking money from the youth football team, and of course they denied it, and they were right. They didn't do anything.
and when she accused them, they had to go through like financial audits.
investigations.
Yeah.
And didn't she, correct me if I'm wrong, did she file DVPs against people in that league too?
I think it may have been restraining orders.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah. What's a DVP? Like domestic violence?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was just
Okay.
restraint. Yeah. But I think initially that one, they didn't, I guess the state police didn't think she was involved in it. Like she was involved in the board, but they didn't think she was the one stealing money at that point.
Right.
Is that true? Or
I don't know exactly all the
Okay.
details on there. Plus, it's been a while ago there.
Yeah.
But I know that the state police did investigate it there.
Mhm.
And they found that, the people that were accused of it did no wrong.
okay.
Well, let's, people reached out and was like, we had a year of embarrassment and we had to go through all these audits and it was a nightmare. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is crazy.
But she was like part of the group that was, I guess, taking action against the other group,
Yes.
right? Like she was
Yeah.
involved.
Mhm.
Like she didn't just, like you said, like you assumed if you're standoffish, you wouldn't want to be involved, but she did kind of,
Mhm.
there were arguments at games and like
Yes.
she was in the middle of that too.
Yeah, because it was just kind of like one big feud. You just kind of
Mhm.
sit back and watch it from the sideline, going, "What is going on?"
So it'd be verbal altercations or like, are we talking fists were flying?
No,
or-
no.
No.
So it's just mostly just be verbal and this and that. So-
Gotcha. Okay.
Did that surprise you at all, seeing her like that?
Well, she really didn't say a whole lot. Now she would say some things to him, and
Uh-huh.
it's kind of really surprising. You're just kind of like, "Oh, okay." But
Sure.
Now, of course, Mike would say whatever.
Sure. And, it's important to note Michael, according to the investigation, what ultimately came out was unaware of things Natalie was doing.
Oh no, Mike never knew. And
Yeah.
the thing with Mike is Mike believed everything that she tell him.
Mhm.
Because Steph will tell you, we'd show up to the football games and stuff. We don't normally sit with them. And we'd be like, "Hey, Mike, where's Natalie at?" And he'd be like, "Oh, she's in the car. She's discussing the contracts with the people. She's fighting with the government right now, and she'll be out here in a little bit there." But and he'd always, every time he'd always compliment her. Man, she's so smart. Doing this
Mhm.
stuff, and man, she's just she just works on this stuff nonstop.
Yeah. A typical marriage, you do what your wife says, and hopefully they're not, an embezzling potential murderer.
Swindling you.
Well, he told me that, she had started the business and she got that business going. She was, she had made it successful. And he was like, she knows everything about that. Like she knows, everything about it and she knows how to run it. And it's just successful because of her.
So you all noticed that when if I was to ask you what was Michael's involvement in the business, what was your all's experience with that?
So I never talked to him about any of that, except for what he had said at the game. When she started talking to me about us investing and all this, she had said that she wanted me to do the medical side. And so, even to make it look real, she even asked me like for my medical license number and things like that. And so, she said that, Michael's mom was doing the medical side, but they were tired of working with her. And, they wanted me to do the medical side, that Mike loved us and that, but she also said, don't talk to Michael about it right now because I just don't want him and his mom to get into it. So just don't talk to him. So it was like, don't talk to him about you doing the business. Right. So, but then, she would say, but he doesn't want her doing it anymore. So it was like, okay.
When they say, or go ahead, John.
I was going to say, just going back to Natalie there for a second, for her business, she even had it down that she was a Native American, and she also put her business where it was because what was it? Because they had to have it in a bad part of town or something like that.
Yeah,
some kind of geographic.
She didn't put Native American.
Yes. And she had to put it in some kind of geographical location that was like lower income or something like that, so they could get the bids on a government contract. That's how well she thought.
And she had first dibs on them because she was a Native American small business woman owner.
Yeah, and that was one.
She got all the like contracts firsthand.
Of course she did. That's amazing. Okay. So when she would pitch it like, hey, I got this thing I can sell, how would she describe what she actually did? Like, what was it exactly? Which I know, we hear weapons contracts, but I'm just curious what that pitch sounds like.
So when she first said it to me, she said, you really need to think about, consulting into our business on the medical side. And she kind of said like she did contracts for the government and they would tell her whatever they needed. And then it would cost so much money that they would invest in. And then you would see the return in like 30 days. So, and I really still didn't even understand that. So I didn't really jump on that right then and there because I was like, well, I really don't understand that. But then the more she talked about it and explained, then she would like send me for like examples. And I think the first one that I ended up saying, okay, I'll do was like around like $2,000. And, it was for first aid kits for something. I can't even remember. I'll probably have the picture of it, but,
ooh, that'd be great.
I'll find it.
Okay.
But it was fun. I did listen to your podcast yesterday, and what you said about me was very true. I keep everything.
Right.
I've even explained that to people before. If you sent me a text message, I have it like from years ago. So
ain't it nice being trustworthy? It's nice not worrying about what's in your freaking phone. But some of this, I was telling Josie, I was like, people realize like text messages are like they're saved, right? Like,
right. And I don't know why I was like that, but I guess like I don't know. I mean, I guess like,
well, you never
think
God was telling me to be prepared for that. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's just strange that I always did that. Like, I remember like even getting a new phone and them saying at the phone store, like, you keep everything. I'm like, yes, I do.
Thank goodness. How thick was the binder? Like this thick?
I mean, it was like a, like a school binder that you'd like go and have like a semester full of notes in it. Cause I just remember he handed it to you because I couldn't really see you from where I was at. I had to watch through like the monitors. And so I didn't realize everything that Tom Truman was handing to you. And then when I went back and watched it, I was like, that's a full binder that you're like flipping through and just pages and pages of text messages between the two of you.
And in which we're going to get into, there's tons that are huge that, you told me about that would have been like, oh yeah, she don't have cancer. Like, here's the proof. Which I uploaded to that drive, but we'll go through your. I definitely want to make a note. I want to see like what these contracts look like, because basically they prove that she was fabricating these contracts out of thin air, right?
Well, yes, but honestly, there was one time that I had stopped by her house for something, and she actually showed me how to do them. Like, so there's actual websites that you get on. One is called Sam's. I can't remember the other one right off the bat.
Not the Sam's Club, right?
No.
Okay.
But she had me to actually sign up to be eligible to get on those sites to see those things. So she actually showed me that you could legitly do them. So I'm thinking, I thought, well, okay, that's what she's doing, so, and it is. And then when everything went down, I was like, oh gosh, I don't even want an association with this website. But they are real, it's just that she wasn't doing them.
So like looking back then, after hearing all the testimony, is that what you think Michael was doing? He was on those websites.
I think he probably saw those websites and probably thought that was legitly going on, because it is real. It is a real thing. And I still to this day try to figure out, like, why did she have me to sign up for all that stuff? Like,
just in case the cancer killed her before then.
Yeah. And it was kind of like, I don't know. I guess to just to more confirm that it was real, like,
right,
as a cover.
Have you watched War Dogs?
No, but she did. So when this started, she said, "Have you seen the movie War Dogs?" And I said, "No."
Oh, you're fine.
I said no, and
go right ahead, John.
And she said, "Well, I suggest you watch that, because that's how we got started."
Right.
And
so she told you.
Yes, she told me that.
Oh, wow.
But I'm not anybody that knows me at all. I'm not a TV watcher. No. I just don't
have time for it.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, I have questions. So this is great. Okay. Because I have this whole theory, which it may be complete BS, but I was thinking, like, okay, War Dogs was brought up in the mercy phase for a reason. So, but now we have kind of tangible proof that, like, okay, this was brought up to you, that, like, this is where the idea came from. Okay.
And when we went to federal, we did a victim statement in federal. And I talked about that in my federal statement about the War Dogs and things like that.
Wow.
When we were prepping, when we were getting ready for this court, it was like, well, this is only for, but federal is different. She had taken a plea. She had pled guilty. So we weren't testifying. There was not like cross-examination, it wasn't no objections. So you could read whatever you wanted to say. So like I had a 4-page statement that I read, and
because it was just for her sentencing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the U.S. attorneys that, were representing us, they said, we want you to write a victim statement. We want everybody to present that to the judge, because he was sentencing her, and we want to ask for maximum, because it was either going to be like 2 years or 11 years. And so they felt like if each victim got up and read their statement, then, their story would push. And it did. He gave her maximum on that of what was on the plea.
Right.
So, and he even told her, he said, with the crime that the 26 counts that you committed, that you were charged with, and you pled to 2 and 2, he said, you really would be like 30 years. So this is, 11 years is like nothing.
Yeah. And you said this court. I like how you said when we were preparing for this court, yes, you all were involved with the financial,
Yes.
the trial and the murder trial.
Right. And so this time it was more like, they're trying to, this is about more the death, the events. But I felt like there was so much I even could have said then, and it was kind of funny to me because I don't go to court, obviously. I mean, how
Good for
nervous
you.
I was. So I've not been in court, and except for just like I said, that federal experience,
And
was
federal's a lot
totally different.
scarier
It
when
was, but you could say what you just got up and read, and nobody said anything. And so, I mean, what I have seen on TV, it's funny because I thought you went there and you told your story because that's what you see. Like people get to tell their whole experience with that person. And so that's what I was like in the back of my mind, like preparing for this. Like, I'm just going to get up and tell my story. And John's like, no, you have to answer the questions. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
So that was like,
John was like, this is court.
Like this is for real court, not just your TV show.
Right. And it's hard to imagine, but like the attorneys kind of on both, but obviously the prosecution, they've called you, but the defense, like they can manipulate some of their questioning in a way. They can cut you off. It's not, again, like you said, you don't just get to share your story. Like you have to abide by the route that they're taking you on.
And I guess like the difficult part too was even like my questioning. I'm a laid back person, like so to speak. It takes a lot to rattle me, but it's like he started twisting my words. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is gonna.
You did good. John, you pull over Matthew Victor. He's got a bad sticker.
Oh no.
Do you let him go? Come on, let's not. You don't have to answer that, but we can think about that one. All right. So before I bounce out of football entirely, so ultimately that kind of got pushed aside, right? Is that because you were involved in particular? You had to have a bow repossessed, kind of.
Oh yeah. So
kind of lay that story out from the beginning.
Well, so back when we started talking to them, or when I really started heavily talking to her was like, I guess fall of 2018. So we would sit with them and games and things like that. Go eat pizza after games, things like that. I mean, when I would roll up to the game, because I was usually coming straight from work. I mean, Mike would literally have us like 4 seats set out. We sat with them. I mean, as soon as you walk through the gates, Mike's hollering at you like, hey, come on, hey, I got your seat, have you coffee? I mean, just, that was the friend that he was. Like, he was very happy with me and John being, and he loved John, like his job, like it just, I don't know, he was just so like interested in, in John's work. And so they became pretty close. They would do Lowe's trips and stuff like that together. But when Mike got sick the first time, I say for us that we knew about was in November or end of October, November, but
2018. Yeah.
And so that was strange because, she had said that he was sick. John had went over there. And were you over there then? And then they transferred him to the hospital, or Chris took him to the hospital.
I can't remember.
Or he came after. I can't remember the whole gist of that. But John, he had thrown up in the car. And so John took it to one of our friends and had it detailed.
For him there.
And
that's nice.
Yeah. So, but when he got down to the hospital in Charleston, later that night, she had texted and said that they thought he had a brain tumor. And so, so I was like, okay, well, we're going to come.
Yeah.
So we left and went down there, and, they had him sedated, and he was coming in and out of sedation and kind of like wanting to get up when he was coming out of sedation. So they wanted to restrain him. Well, John and Chris and
Jonathan.
Jason Bowen
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
their
Jason.
preacher was down there. And so they decided that they were going to stay overnight and physically restrain him rather than him wake up in restraints because they thought that would really upset him.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I went on home. I got home at like 3 a.m. because I had a medical conference at the Greenbrier that I was having to do. And so you can kind of talk about that.
Yeah, bring that mic over to you a little bit. So what was your experience when he was sick
You know, that
the first time?
the first time we was down there, like she said, it's me, Chris Davis, Jason, and we were down there, and he come out of it and just kind of didn't know really what had happened there, and he just really didn't know what the heck was going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny because the nurse comes in and she says, "Does your family have an issue of mental illness?" And she points right at Natalie and says, "Yeah, her mom's crazy." I was like,
Oh, Michael tells that.
yes,
Yes,
to the
to the
nurse.
nurse.
Oh,
You just-
God.
John's
Yeah.
like, you
And I
just
was like, I
blank.
don't think it's what they meant, but
Goodness.
So Michael's a funny dude. Okay. It's fun to get to, because, I feel like throughout this trial, the one thing everyone forgot was, not everyone, but was forgotten was Michael.
Right.
And, I think the juror mentioned they didn't even see a picture of him until they had his driver's license.
Mhm. They said when they went to go deliberate, that there was a picture of his license in one of the police reports, and that was the first time they'd seen like an actual picture.
First time they seen, and you don't think of stuff like that, but they're not going to bring someone on the jury that knows him,
Mhm.
so it makes sense.
Right.
It was talked about that like Michael did IT. I know he had his own business called like technology management. I think something along those lines. What was he mostly doing day to day as far as like business work? Like he was coaching, but like did he have like an outside
did.
job or?
He did. He owned a technology business.
Mhm.
Actually, there was a couple medical practices that
Really?
put in that stuff for.
he did. And I actually saw him there, working at those
Oh, okay.
practices, setting up their IT. And he had like a consulting business. When we had opened up an ENT practice in Beaver, and his name was one that I suggested to the boss to, because he did that independent contracting to set up all that stuff. And I knew the other couple clinics he had done. We have a friend that owns, that she does like, management for Airbnbs and such.
Mhm.
And he had set up, a couple systems for her companies. And so, that kind of aggravated me, I guess. I wasn't allowed to watch the trial. And even
Right.
after I testified, I was on recall list.
Yeah,
so
I
I
remember
still
that.
couldn't watch
Yeah.
anything. And so when I was able to go back and see, it really frustrated me
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
that
they kinda
was made
act
out like
couldn't
he-
work or
Yeah.
wasn't able to get along with anybody. And
There's a lot of that. Yeah. It was like, wait a minute. I know he has a job.
Yeah.
I had people with message saying like, he installed my phone lines.
Right.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Well, Daphne even said like he didn't have the temperament to
Yeah.
work with people, and obviously we don't get to hear much about him besides like what's being.
if you can't work with people, you can't coach with people.
That's what I was
I
gonna.
mean, because I'm gonna tell you now, coaching and dealing with parents is
Mhm.
much harder than being in the real world.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. Anyone who's
Yeah.
coached any team from U8 to U12 knows that it can pop
Yeah.
off.
Oh yeah, or just watch it from the bleachers.
Yeah. For sure. For sure. Pull this down just a little bit, Stephanie. Sorry, I'm a big mic hound.
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry. So yeah. Going back a little bit, I think it's important to I want to set the tone of Natalie's personality here. And you told me a story about a bow.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind telling me about that when you all were in the football league that ultimately was figured out to be purchased with those funds. Is that right?
Yeah. So,
I think. Sorry, interject. That was purchased for the baseball league funds,
Yes,
though,
it
right?
was.
Because
Oh,
there was
yeah.
there's two. I got them both confused because there was this football league that she was involved in, but she wasn't involved in the money part. But then the baseball league, she was involved in.
Yeah.
I think that's...
And I'll tell you how that got started was our son's getting ready to have the major surgery that Steph's spoken about before that.
Yeah.
And we were at football practice, and Mike said, hey, he said, we want to do something nice for Hunter. So we want to give him a bow for when he comes out of surgery, he'll have something to smile about.
Yeah.
And that's actually how that come about.
Which is a really nice thought.
Yeah.
Except it was taken later, correct?
Yes.
They confiscated it.
Well, so when they found out, when they started looking at the baseball league stuff, they realized there was a bow purchased. And so that was something that she had ordered for Hunter once he had surgery, and he was going through all of that. And then when all the investigation came out, the trooper working it had contacted John and said, something about the bow, because we were right up, we were on it when we saw it. We're like, we know where that bow is. So we had to take it and turn it in. I mean, it wasn't like that they were, you have to, once we figured it out, we knew that they were taken to
it's a blood bow. I don't know. Well, it's purchased from, you couldn't keep that.
No.
So.
When did you have to give it back? Like, do you remember when, around?
It was after.
So it was 2019? Okay.
Yeah, probably July, after everything went down.
Yeah.
What did that feel like?
After, I can't remember.
Well, because
it's supposed to be a gift for your son after going through, surgery,
so
and then
it was just really, because as if it's not enough, your kid is suffered, and he went through a hard time. So I remember my stepdad was so mad about it because, here he had went through this horrible thing, and then someone basically steals funds to get him a gift, and then
from children.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we have to give that back as if he hadn't been through enough. And he was so mad. So the day that we turned it in, he's taking him to Flat Top Arms and go pick out your bow, because he was just so mad about it, which we were going to replace it. But that was just something that really hit with my stepfather, and that he was so mad about it. So, he got a new bow, but it was just, I guess, the whole point of it.
Even still, yeah. It's like she put a jar in a gas station and said, I have, this is into the cancer stuff, but it's saying, I have cancer, give me money, and put all the money in there, and then you take the money and there's no cancer. So it's kind of, you're doing that to children, all these people that give money so that kids can play sports.
Well, it's one thing too to target adults, but I think we learned a lot, but there were a lot of kids that were impacted. You had the scholarships, you had the people that the money that was taken from the league, gifts that were given to kids. I think that was kid.
And it was crazy because when we knew this was coming up with his surgery and stuff, she was asking me specifics, what kind of bow does he want? What color? Just asking him, what exactly do you want? He was 13 at the time. Right. And we found out, so, back to Mike was in the hospital, John had stayed with him, and then he come home, and then that Sunday we went back down there. Of course, Mike's awake and we're talking, and he is mad about being at the hospital, but basically there were no answers, and
there was no mention from him about the brain tumor, or was that, so that was just brought up by Natalie.
And then, there was nothing ever diagnosed, but right after that event, our son started getting sick. I guess he started around October, and he had started, getting really sick with his issue. And what it was is he had a mass in the right side of his face that came up, and I'll share pictures with that too. But he, he started getting really sick. And so we had went for CT scans and found out something's, going on and they're going to have to go take it out. So we spent we were sent to, CAMC, and then we went to UVA, and then we went to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And so this was all a whole process, and so this was basically our fall. He couldn't even finish out the football because and he loved middle school football,
I'm sure,
but his face was so swollen, the mass was so big, and he was staying so sick that he couldn't even put the helmet on. So, and we knew we were facing surgery because, that was going to have to come out, and they thought it was cyst, and then it was just a big mess. And then it was maybe when it come out, this might be lymphoma. So then his case got sent to Mayo Clinic. So we were still waiting results. And he ended up having surgery the end of January, the very last day of January of 2019. And he was in the hospital for a couple of days. He had drain tubes. They had to do a fat transposition where they took fat out of his stomach to put back in place where the mass was. So he wouldn't have a sinking in place. And he was paralyzed on the right side for a year.
Goodness.
And he still got some paralysis in his mouth, but you don't know that unless you know it.
How's he doing now?
He's doing good. I mean,
Okay.
he's still got that one area, but
Okay.
So as a 13-year-old, and you've been through that, I mean, he was in surgery for 8.5 hours.
That's a lot.
And during that visit, we're at the hospital. I mean, Natalie sends him balloons, a fruit basket, and some other gifts down to the hospital. And, right before that, I had invested, because that's when she was you really have all this coming up with Hunter, and she's like, I want to see you being able to stay home with him. This is going to be a tough year. And I want you to be able to stay home with him. And so we can invest, and in 30 days, we can have you some good payouts,
Jesus.
And so that was the first. So I had just done that. And then, he is in the hospital for 2 weeks, and we knew that, and we had made the decision with the doctor that he probably needed to be homebound because of the extent.
Sure.
We didn't know what we were facing. Was he going to have treatment? And so that was what kind of suckered me in. And, they were buying all this stuff, and you thought, well, okay. And Mike's talking about how successful it is. And, so that was the first bait, I say.
And that was how much? I mean, if you want to say.
Oh, that was $2,000 right from the beginning. And so, it was implied you were to get a return of X within 30 days. Yeah, $4,000. It always usually doubled.
Gotcha.
At least doubled.
Was it suspicious at all that initially, or did you really think oh, this is my friend looking out for me? She's trying to help me after she's been successful. What was your initial reaction when she's presenting you with these contracts in January?
Well, I had lots of questions because I didn't really understand how it was working. We knew Chris was doing it. John and Chris have been friends for a long time. So we asked Chris about it, and he was like, yeah, I'm doing it, So we're like, okay, so it must be real, because Chris wouldn't be like, yeah, I'm doing it,
Sure.
So,
There it
I fell
is.
into it.
And it's obviously it's a good amount of money, but it's not, it's not $500,000.
No.
No.
And because, she would show me stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. But then that's when we started out small.
Right. So she tried to upsell, well, but wait, there's more.
Right.
Yeah.
But then say when that was due, it would be like, well, you're getting back $4,000, but here's more. Like you can take that $4,000 and here's what's available today. And you might turn that into $8,000, so that's how it would roll.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or
so she would roll over, like just say, hey, here's the number on paper, but you want to just reinvest. And then that probably wasn't.
And then there was some that like it made it even look better. So like, okay, maybe if I give like another $1,500 or $2,000, or I think the next one I gave her $3,000. And then that was going to be like a total of $7,000 invested. I was getting $15,000 back. And that's how it went. There was one time that we were in Charleston and I gave her $5,000 in cash. And, we had went to the bank, picked it up, and she told me to deposit it into her bank at Chase. Well, they wouldn't let me put a cash deposit in there without like her, which I thought that's weird, because if I send someone to my bank account and they're willing to put cash in it, that's
why
cool.
would you?
Yeah.
So, she'd give me her account number, but the lady was like, no, I'm sorry. We can't do that. So we dropped it off to her house. And, so it was just things like that. And then,
then with that money, she bought our friend a dog.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, the
I'm
next
sorry to
day,
laugh.
literally,
I'm sorry.
no.
No,
We
it is
joke with
funny.
him because I'm like, we own your dog, so we need to have visitation rights.
She actually spent like, I think it's either $4,500 or $5,000.
But I had given
like
her
the
that
very
5,000.
next day.
Dude, what is
the
this
very next
dog?
day- It's a bulldog.
Oh,
It's-
English bulldog.
Those are
Yeah.
cute.
Okay.
So we had given her $5,000 in cash, and the next day, and it's still not hitting me. Like they're flying to get a dog, him and his kids. And so then, when everything rolls out, I'm like, hey, dude, we need some visitation rights on this dog. We paid for your dog. It's funny, but it's not funny.
Who has
I'm
the
not going to say his name.
Oh yeah, let's not say it. Let's not dox the dog, but
Yeah.
we love bulldogs.
No, because we love this guy.
Oh,
Too.
he's
Like he's a
an
great
awesome guy.
person,
Okay.
and he honestly didn't know either.
And it's
he's
not-
like the
it's-
rest of us.
It's not baby dog.
No.
Okay.
It's
No.
not the baby dog.
No.
Okay.
Did you ever?
No, I would go get him.
Like you mentioned that you went to the federal sentencing, and they talked about some of the other victims. Like Chris and his partners gave $500,000, others gave like $100,000. Do you question now, like why she wanted $2,000 from you? Like, you know what I mean? Like when she was targeting these other people with like hundreds of thousands, like why?
I think every little bit helped.
Yeah, I think she just thought. Some was getting like increments. Like I guess. I don't know how she talked about it to huge amounts at one time, because I was like still apprehensive about $2,000. But
that's a large amount of money for majority of.
Hunter and Terry start surgery, and and I didn't know like what was going to happen, and so I was hesitant about.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like she was like. She would do these things for clout, and she wanted people to like her. And then she would come up with these amounts to buy certain things. And then maybe the large amounts were the large purchases of like, well, I want to go to Paris.
Yeah. See, I don't even understand what her end game was. Because she got it up at 4. It's like, what are you still sticking around here for?
Right.
It's literally like, buy this can for like $10,000. And then she goes to Paris and spends the money. And then it's like, well, what do I do now? And then you make up some paperwork to show, look what your $10,000 did.
Yeah.
Well, you have to start eventually paying off some. Like that's how the Ponzi scheme, like you get initial investors and then you get more investors, but then you have to start paying some money. So it's almost like you said, like she used your money to buy a dog. Like, so you kind of think like she was probably using other money to give to other.
She's got all this money there, but why is she still sticking around? Why is she not gone?
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. So, and to clarify, you all never seen a tangible return of like, here's your return in your bank account.
No, so that did happen.
Okay.
So
I was going to say, because usually they try kind of trickle in a little bit to
so
keep
the last check I gave her was, I think, the beginning of May. And actually, my mom gave her a check too. Like that was kind of, that never went, you know, I had told Natalie that my mom was interested in doing one, but my mom never spoke to Natalie. And it was a small amount, but, or never spoke to Natalie about them. She had spoke to Natalie, of course, but like not about anything like that. And so, of course, she was like, sure, you know, because, well, of course, anybody wants to give money to the
It's a sound investment.
Like, yeah, let's do it.
And this was 2019, so Michael had passed away.
He had already passed away, yeah. And so, you know, so anyway, I gave her a check for my mom and for me on the same day. That was the last one. And that May. So in May, I found out that our practice, like the physician I was working for was in private practice and he was transitioning out and going to Virginia. So I had been cut like to part-time, all in the same mess. And so, and John, he had fell at work in March, or not at work, I'm sorry, at home, and tore his rotator cuff. So he had to have emergency surgery and he was off from work. So, I mean, and he was, you know, still getting sick time, but it was still like, I was cut to part-time. Hunter's sick. Like he's on homebound and he's, you know.
Expenses are from that.
Yeah. And, so like Hunter had like a $90,000 surgery. John had a $90,000 surgery. So it was like, you know, right together. And I mean, you know, yeah, you have insurance, but you think about
there's stuff that pops up.
20% and the, you know, and so,
so you were in like a really vulnerable state.
I was in a very vulnerable state and I was looking for like full-time work again. I was working full-time and working weekends at Med Express. And, so in May, like I said, the beginning of May, I had given her our last check that I was going to give her. And, we were supposed to see a return like the middle of May. And I ended up telling her, because we had like a pretty large amount coming, it was like supposed to be like $100,000 in this May 15th.
So you're hyped. You're like, yeah.
Yeah.
Finally.
So I said, she's like, what do you want to do with that? And I said, well, I want $20,000 and I'm going to, and I said, you know, if you want to reinvest the other 80, that's fine. I don't care, but like $20,000 would, you know, pay a house payment for a few months and do some other, you know, bills that we needed. And just until I could get back full-time work and stuff again. And John was back to work. So, and so she was like, okay, well, 15th came and no money because like my accounts are locked up and all this. So then finally, the end of May, she puts a check into my account, my bank account. And it wasn't the $20,000, but she had put some in there. But then it bounced for inefficient funds.
Ooh.
So that was a big mess. And then when I told her, I was like, well, that check, you know, it bounced out like for inefficient. She's like, they have my accounts locked up.
And
was this check from Bank of America too, or that she was giving
honestly, I don't remember where it was from.
If I was to guess, I would
think it
say
was First Community.
Oh, was it? Okay.
You get fees on that when
oh yeah.
So that's that's on you.
Yeah. I had a ton of fees too.
How big, you remember kind of how big it was? Are the fees based on the bounce?
And daily.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Yep. So, you know, I'm like, your check bounced and this and that. The bank had called me. And,
hey, Natalie, funny thing.
Right.
Yeah, she said it's because they got my accounts locked. They won't let me have any access to any of my money. I'm at the lawyer's office trying to get this straightened out. So then she tells me to make a QuickBook account. I never knew anything about QuickBook because, for one, I mean, I get paid by my job. So, like, it's a check.
Sure. Well, it's a business owner type.
Yeah. So, not invoicing people.
Right.
So, I did that because she said that her lawyer was releasing her funds and he would go in and pay those QuickBook accounts.
Wow.
So it was just.
What a mess.
And I said to John, I was like, we're not getting our money back. Something is very weird.
Did you kind of have like do you have a moment where you just, the pit of your stomach just fell out and was like,
yeah,
whoa?
because I was like, because, I'm asking John, I'm like, why would they still have our accounts locked up? He's like, they can't lock your accounts for that long. So.
And to clarify, they are locked up. Later, we would find out because of the financial investigation, right? Is that correct?
But they weren't locked up. There was just
they were
no
never
money.
locked
There
up.
was no money. Yeah.
Yeah, they were never locked up. There's no money.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That was just her excuse.
Mhm.
Well, they're locked up.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. This clarifies.
Did you ever, because I think you mentioned like the next month, I think June is when she got her house. There's a search warrant. Did you ever confront her about any of this? How did that go? Like, did you see her in person? Was it over text?
No. So, funny, the day that she had, we had went to Snowshoe that weekend before.
Mm-hmm.
And she had told me that she fixed the account. She had fixed the check.
Mm-hmm.
We were traveling, so I don't know if you know much about Pocahontas County, but there's no service until you get right in Snowshoe.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had a message from her that she had been back to the account and she had put a cashier's check in the account. So I'm like, okay, that's cash essentially.
Great. Right. Yeah.
So the next morning I check the account. There's nothing there. So I'm like, that's weird, So when I'm like, well, maybe I'll show up Monday. I'm not sure. Maybe it was late or something like that. So Monday, nothing. But she tells me while we're in Snowshoe that she's going to sell Michael's truck, which me and John were both like, what? Because we thought that was weird because she kept saying her dad was going to take his truck and she was going to save it for Ashton. I mean, that truck, Michael loved that truck.
What kind of truck was it?
It was a Sierra diesel.
Ooh, okay. So it's like $9,000 truck probably. Or
and he
something
had
like that.
had it personalized up and it was a nice.
So it meant a lot to him.
Oh yeah. He loved that truck. And so that really kind of pulled my heartstrings.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why is she selling his truck? And I said to John, she's having some kind of a money issue because why is she selling his truck?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was weird. So on that Monday, it's still not showing up in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So Tuesday, I call the bank and I'm like, just question, if someone puts a cashier's check in your account, it would be immediately, right? And she's like, yeah, what are you talking about? So I tell her and she brings up the account. She's like, ma'am, that was a personal check. And because of the last time when it bounced back, we've put a hold on it. Mm-hmm. So, and then that day, it literally bounces back again. So I'm driving home from Lewisburg. John calls me and he's like, they're at her house raiding her house. I'm like, who? He's like, feds, state police, everybody. And so I had a friend that texted me that night when all this is, and she called me from her mother's phone. And she's like,
that day, while she's being raided?
Yeah. She's like, they came and, they've raided things and they took my phone. So don't text or call my phone, is what she said. And I'm like,
don't put any more evidence on my phone, please.
Right. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, they already have
I'm so mad.
107 pages.
I'm so mad because I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we had been questioned, but only about the death. I had talked to Bledsoe a couple times, but only about the death is all that we knew about.
Mm-hmm.
So my friend texts me and she's like, so I hear there's a Ponzi scheme and I hope that you're not tied up into that. Meaning she was hoping I wasn't helping part of this process.
on the run.
Yeah, because she knew that, we were friends. And so I'm like, what are you talking about? What's a Ponzi scheme?
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea.
Sure.
She's like, Google it. So I Google it and I'm like, holy crap. So I said, I'm going there. I'm going to her house.
Mm-hmm.
I was mad. And John's like, you can't go down there. I'm like, yes, I am. I'm going to make her tell me what's going on. So he's like, okay, well, I can't let you go by yourself.
Yeah. John's like, I gotta stand in between them.
Yeah. So he goes down there with me. We get out of the car. Her mom and her brother and her dad are standing in the driveway. And her mom says, Stephanie, it was so bad. They rated everything. They even took like $7 that was on Ashton's dresser.
I'm sure they did.
And she's like, I don't know if she can talk to you. I said, well, she is.
Mm.
So she comes outside. And I'm like, what is going on here?
Mhm.
You know? And she's like, it's so bad. She's like, they took everything. They even took insulin I had in the refrigerator.
Oh no.
And I was like, insulin in the refrigerator? What do you have? What are you talking about? And she was like, the insulin I had for Gavin Davis here in the refrigerator. And so.
Thank God they did.
And I'm like, look at me. I'm like, look me in the eye, because she would never look you in the eye. And I said, look me in the eye and tell me you don't know what's going on here. And she was like, I have no idea. They had a search warrant. That's all she said.
Did you believe her?
Oh, no, because like, I know something's going down in order for feds just to come and bring flatbeds and bring everything out of your house.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't just happen for no reason.
Yeah. You would know that too, right?
Yeah.
You-
And
they don't
what's
just-
bad about that is, as me and Steph are driving back home, I'm like, Natalie sold her Mercedes to one of our friends. And I went, and Steph goes, that's a leased car. I went, yes, it is.
So she sold it when it was under lease?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so,
Oh,
So like, we're calling them up and like, hey, that car that you guys bought is a lease. They're like, no, it's good. They're like, no, it's a lease. And it
Wow.
was.
and they are like, that's why we can't get the title to it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because they've been trying to get the title to it and
Yeah.
they couldn't get it. I was like, it's because
Oh,
it's a
man.
lease.
Yeah,
That
but
is
we get-
nuts.
We get in the car and I look
Well-
at John and I said, John, she shouldn't have insulin for Gavin Davis. Like, he has a pump.
Mhm.
They don't do shots of insulin anymore. It goes through his pump. And so he calls Chris and says something to him about it. And he's like, yeah, she's been telling everybody that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm.
And she'd also sold the same people Mike's truck after she took out a $20,000 lien against it.
Wow.
Yeah, so they had to pay that off.
Oh, the people she sold it to?
Yes.
The same, the
So-
same people bought the Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
When she started unraveling, she was just like, screw it. I'm just going to do
Yeah.
whatever I want to do.
Mhm.
Yeah, and those are great people right there too that she did that to.
Oh, well, everybody's great people except for her in this. And I'm just like, and this is telling me so much, because I just imagine obviously you're figuring out like, we're probably not going to get our money back. But then these flatbeds start showing up. Insulin starts happening. So how quickly did you start piecing together, like, she may have like murdered Michael?
Well, so I had started suspecting something a little bit before that, because I don't know that I suspected that she murdered him, but things were definitely very odd, because I worked at MedExpress, and one of my like best friends was a PA as well. And we worked together. And I had told her and another one of my best friends about the events at the house that day. And right after Michael had passed away, right after he had passed away, she didn't let us come to the hospital the second time. The first time we went to the hospital.
In November?
Yes.
Yeah, or the funeral.
You guys couldn't go to the funeral?
You didn't? Yeah,
we
you
didn't get to go to the funeral.
Mm.
Were you told you couldn't go?
Yes.
By
And it's
her?
important to note, COVID wasn't a thing
No.
Mhm.
yet. Okay.
No. So, we kept, like, she had a group message with me and John together and was telling us stuff from the hospital. And we would, John wanted to go see Michael. And it would be like, well, visiting hours are such and such time. And then we would get ready to go at visiting hours. And she would say, no, don't come because they're not letting anyone back. So it was like, that was to keep us from coming.
Mhm.
Now I know, because after they started investigating, then I knew she was telling stories, like she had told stories, like, to Michael's mom, to
Yeah.
others that like I had been there all day. I had monitored him all day. I had been there twice that day. That was first that I was there all day. Then it was I had been there twice. So there was a lot of like different stories, and she knew how Donna was and how I was. And so we would have been at the hospital, like trying to figure out and ask questions because I kept asking her questions through text. Like, and I'm even saying to her in these messages, like, well, I don't really understand what's going on. So he had a seizure, but how are we like now unresponsive on event? Like, what are they doing for the seizures? How are we brain dead now? And then I'm like, why are we moving to hospice? Because he's not in pain. And, you know, and he didn't have a head injury because she told us, I asked 3 times at the house and she told me he didn't hit his head.
The first time we heard the head injury was whenever her and Dunlap did an interview on TV. And we were both like, what in the world? I was like, where did that come from?
Right.
And like Chris Davis was my first phone call, and I was like, did you just hear this?
And you know that for a fact, like you heard nothing about a head.
No, I asked her.
We were there. I mean, we're looking at it.
Yeah.
I mean, no head injury, no nothing like that.
Right.
I mean, like I said, I was appalled when I saw that.
Right. And I wanted to make sure, and I tried to say this in court, but, you know, he kept objecting to me. I did not examine him, period.
Right.
At all. Because I didn't even have anything on me. I didn't even have a stethoscope.
Right.
I was home with my sick kid trying to work out his Board of Education stuff. So my brain was like totally wrapped around all this stuff going on. I didn't even take a stethoscope. John was like, bring a thermometer, you know, and it didn't even hit me. Like, it's funny. It's funny. It's not funny, the whole situation, period. But when he slapped that text message up in court, like the temp of 103, I'm like, I forgot about that text. You know what I mean? Like, it didn't even hit me. And then it's like, she did say that. And then she wanted a thermometer, you know? And well,
there's just so much. How do you remember all this stuff?
Yeah. And there were so many texts, but we weren't allowed to go to the hospital. Basically, she made it like that. I didn't, you know, when she kept saying like the first time or second time maybe that I talked to the investigator and he was like, so you weren't there twice. You weren't there for excess. And I was like, no, I swear maybe 20 minutes is what I thought I was there. So there was an IT guy there and he's like, oh, we can find this out. You know, so he goes to Google Maps, downloads my timestamps of where I was that day. He could go back to that date. And he was like, you were there from 1:11 to like 1:39. I was like, 28 minutes, sir.
I was wondering how you knew it was 1:11.
Yes.
Because you said that in court. I knew exactly when I was there. We got
the timestamps of exactly where I was. And I was exactly where I was that entire day, like that I had said.
What was that like? Because I think in August of 2019, Natalie goes on like a press tour in a way. Like she speaks to TV, the Register Herald. I have a quote here that she said, it says she's talking about Michael's death and how she's saying she wasn't involved. She said someone was at the house the whole time. We had 2 first responders at the house within 20 minutes of his seizure. We had a physician's assistant and a state trooper at the house within 20 minutes of his fall. So she really uses the 2 of you as like a scapegoat in a way. And I think obviously you can't say anything, but how does that feel hearing that and knowing that she's using your professions as a way to like, you know,
solidify her getaway.
Yeah. I was really upset. And I wanted, of course, to say something. But I called Bledsoe and I'm like, this is making me so mad. Like, and he's like, but you can't say anything. Just stay away from it. Just wait. You know, it'll all come to pieces and come out. Like, and I mean, I really had to, it was hurtful because like, I'm not that person. And I was like, wow, you know, she really had it calculated out. But I don't know if it ever came out. I think it was, I can't remember if it was Jonathan or Jason. One of them was a previous paramedic. I can't remember which one it was. And
I think it was Jonathan.
yeah, one of them had been
Mhm.
like a paramedic or EMT prior to. And that's what she was like, kind of like, but then.
Oh, the two.
Yeah.
Contractors, yeah.
And I think her intention was that John was going to be working because she texted him and said, "Are you working? Can you swing by?" So I think in her plan, she thought she knew I wasn't working because I was home with Hunter.
Right.
But she thought, well, he's going to come here. He's going to be on duty. He's going to have his car.
For
So
sure,
they're
yeah.
going to see his car outside and everything's fine.
Mhm.
You know, the state troopers over here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we're good to walk through. I want to walk through that day in particular for you all, February 6th. And I wanted to lay all this stuff out first because it's important for people to realize what type of environment you all were in. Because we talked, obviously, you all and 8 other people have to live with this, being at this house every day. And I thought it was important for us to discuss it openly. So let's go ahead and start from the beginning. You start getting text messages at about what
I
time
think it was about 7:30. She told me that she was sick.
in the
She
morning?
was sick.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I have your.
Oh yeah, we got the timeline here.
Okay.
So.
So, yeah. And she said that she was sick with a fever because we were supposed to have lunch that day. She knew I was going to the Board of Education and she said, let's have a lunch date. So that was about 7:30. John was supposed to help Michael with something at the hangar. Move something. They were doing something.
Yeah, they bought a
there.
hangar, right? Didn't they buy a hangar in at the airport?
Yeah.
Okay. Which is part of it too. Like you all see them balling out of control, all these vacations,
Yeah.
all these things. Like, yeah, of course they're doing good,
Right.
So, okay, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
So, that was about 7:30, and then at like 10 something, she says Michael's sick too.
Mhm.
So he's not gonna basically in that. I don't think she said it in the message, but she said he was sick, and that in order just to let me know that he wouldn't be going with John that day, I guess. And then the next was his messages.
John's messages.
Mm-hmm.
What
From
did you?
Natalie.
Okay. What did?
From now.
About 12.
Yeah, she texts me and says that Mike's had a seizure and if I would come over help get him off the floor onto the couch. So of course I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll be there as quick as I can. So I drive over there and Jason and Jonathan, the contractors, are already there. So I walk in and Mike's already on the couch there. And that's when I asked her, I said, well, Natalie, I said, how do you want to get Mike to the hospital? I was like, do you want me to drive in? You want to call an ambulance or what do you want to do at this point there? And I said, how do you want to get there? And she's like, well, I'm just going to let him sleep it off. He's had a seizure and I'm just going to let him sleep it off right now. So he's going to rest because, he don't want to go to the hospital and this and that. So that's when I went into the back here and I called Steph. I said, hey, I was like, Natalie's not wanting to take him to the hospital. I was like, see if you can come here and talk her into it.
So your spider sense is it kind of going off like, wait a minute, or like, cause you're a trooper. I mean, you're around people who typically are lying, a lot of times.
Well, no, not with her. She's just, they were just kind of very private people anyway.
Mhm.
Right.
And, it's just like one of those things like, well, I think you should go, but, she's not wanting me to take him or she's not wanting me to call an ambulance. So let me call my wife and see if she can talk her into it.
Right.
Do you think that, did you think at that point that your wife would be able, that Stephanie would be able to convince Natalie to go, just considering all the odd symptoms?
Well, I thought she might be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I was going to say, but of course, she told Steph the thing with that is she was never panicked in it. She just kept telling us, I'm just going to let him sleep it off. If it gets worse, I'll take him to the hospital. Don't worry. But right now, I'm just going to let him rest and sleep it off.
Sure.
And no head injury. Let's keep that in mind.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you hear head injury, obviously that's,
Exactly.
let's go. But I felt for you, Stephanie, personally watching when he would bring up the mandatory reporter stuff and all of this, when you ended up coming to the house, what did you see when you walk in?
So when I walk in, he's laying on the couch and just looks like he's asleep, to me. She has the blood pressure cuff on him. There's numbers on it, which they didn't alarm me. I can't remember exact numbers, but I remember.
So you didn't hear that?
No.
Okay.
She had the pulse ox on him, which tells heart rate, oxygen level. That looked fine. And that's a continuous thing that'll run, That looked fine. I had the thermometer. So I did not see anything. There was no glucose, glucometer laying there, nothing.
She told you about the sugar?
She did tell me that later in a text or something, but I didn't see one there, and I didn't do it. I don't have one. Funny thing about the court case, though, I actually did have a Dexcom I was wearing during court case because I've been having some problems with my sugar too.
Oh, well, welcome to the club.
Yeah. So, anyway, so I did not have one, of course, with me. There would be no reason for me to even have one.
Sure.
And, again, I didn't even have my stethoscope. He looked like he was laying there sleeping. I said, Mike, I'm going to take your temperature. And he, turns his head and looks at me and I take his temperature. So, he goes back to sleep. She's sitting over there in the corner, calm. I sat in the chair, behind him. He's laid out this way, where you would be. And I'm sitting behind him in the recliner. I can see the back of his head. She's sitting over in the corner about where he's at. And John is sitting over here in this recliner. And, I'm like, what happened? And she says, well, he's quit taking his seizure medicine. And we've been sick, or he was sick throwing up, and he had a seizure. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. When people have a seizure disorder, when they get sick, it can cause them to have a seizure.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay. She's like, so he, he had a seizure, and then they brought him in here, and I'm like, well, he needs to be checked. We've got to get him somewhere. And she's like, well, when he does this, that was the key. So when he does this, he just sleeps it off. And I'm like, but still, even someone with a history of seizure disorder, they need to be checked each time, because you never know when one's going to be damaging. And
was this the first time you heard about seizures? Because I know you were at the hospital in November, but
she said that after that incident at the hospital, we never really did find out. She kept saying mold exposure and it had caused a seizure disorder, and they had put him on seizure medicines. Mike had talked to him about the seizures because of pilot license.
Yeah, Mike told me. I said he was trying to get his pilot's license there, and I said something to him about having a seizure. He's like, I don't have seizures.
That's what he said.
Yeah, that's what he told me. And I started thinking, well, is he just being prideful and not wanting to say it, or is he really not having them?
Do we think she tried this before?
Yeah, and
if I had to guess, I would say yes.
I think,
just guessing.
This is a theory. I think she did it before, or she was doing it because he was feeling just sick. I didn't know that he had even said that to Jason until I got to go back and watch that he felt like someone was poisoning him.
Yeah.
But
which is insane.
Yeah. But there were times John took him to Lowe's because they said when he got out of the hospital, that he had had seizures and he couldn't drive, and which he's I don't, he had told him that, but, so I think she did that. She had us to come down there that first time so we would see this time and then think that set the pace for when she was going to do it. So we wouldn't be alarmed either. But honestly, she said, when he does this, he sleeps it off. And I'm trying to explain, we need, everybody needs to be checked each time. And I'm like, where do you want to go? And she's like, let's go. And she's we don't like Raleigh. Okay. Well, he was in Charleston before. Let's go back to Charleston.
Mhm.
No, he wasn't happy then, which he had told John, like, I don't want to go back to the hospital. I hate it.
Who likes hospitals?
Right. But I don't think that it would have come down to that.
Mhm.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, well then let's go to Princeton, and she's like, no, that's okay. She's just over there calm as can be. So no, that's okay. And I said, okay, let's call Chris. He's got the plane.
Mhm.
I'm sure he'll fly somewhere. She was going to Duke for her cancer treatment. So I'm like, let's go to Duke. You like it there?
So she was telling you that, hey, I went to Duke last week. It was crazy.
Yeah.
God.
So,
Oh my God.
so I'm like, let's get Chris. I know he would.
Mhm.
I know he would. I said, listen, I'll cancel my meeting.
I'm
I'll go
sure,
with
yeah.
you. That's fine. No big deal. No, that's okay. She says, I'm going to let him sleep it off. That's what
Mhm.
we always do. And if he gets worse, I will take him.
Mhm.
But she mentioned the Mexican supplements that he had been taking. She said he's been taking these supplements from Mexico.
Was that the first time you'd heard about?
Yes.
Okay.
So I said, what supplements? And she said, well, they have Clomid in them. And I'm like, Clomid, like we give like females to have babies, like
Oh,
for
the
fertility.
Mhm.
And I remember that so well because, like I said, he's right there.
Mhm.
I'm right here. And I look at his head because he's got this thick hair. And, it does like increase like hair growth and things like that.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, yeah, he does have a thick head of hair. So,
Right.
you know,
just start, piecing things together like, oh, yeah, that
yeah.
makes sense.
and that, and that's why I'm like saying I saw his head is because I remember
You were-
that
mhm.
exact medicine and seeing like his hair. And like, there's no injury to his head,
Mhm.
and I even said, I'm like, when she said he had the seizure and this, I'm like, did he hit his head? And she's
Mhm.
like, no. And then, I said something, she said they moved him and I said, are you sure that he did not hit his head? And she's like, no, he didn't. And I'm seeing like,
Mhm.
there's nothing. I saw his face,
Mhm.
when I took his temperature and there was no like bruising, scratches, bumps, nothing on the back of his head, no blood. And,
Yeah, Chris said the same thing when he tested.
I still haven't seen his testimony. I still haven't got to go back and
It's
watch everything.
Very sad.
He said the same thing. There was no bumps. There was no
Yeah.
bruises. There's nothing.
So, when he had turned to me and when I said something to him,
Mhm.
like I thought, well, maybe he is just like sleeping it off, and I don't have everything in front of me. I don't, it's like, why would I report it?
Right.
Mhm.
I didn't think he was in harm's way. And I didn't think, you just don't think
Mhm.
that. I mean, you think your friend, if
Well-
she says he has this history, she's medical too.
Mhm.
And so she's not concerned, but I'm still trying to like, oh, the other thing she said to us was when I was like, well, we can get him flown. She's like, he had such a bad experience in Charleston that he had Chris to sign a DNR paper to sign. He had Chris to legalize him a DNR and me an MPOA. And I was like, really? A DNR? Like, he's so young. Like,
Do
why
not
would he-
resuscitate, right?
Yeah. Like, why would he do that? And she was
Mhm.
like, because he was so mad and didn't want to go back. So I leave. She even mentioned like something about the primary care doctor. Like, what if I just took him to primary care doctor?
Mhm.
And I said, fine, because I'm thinking
Yeah.
they're going to get some stuff on him, see, condition and send him out,
Mhm.
if that's what it needs. So I was like, I really don't care as long as he gets checked today.
Mhm.
Like, he has to get checked.
Mhm.
And you said blame it on me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
she was like, he was so mad, I said, you can blame it on me. Tell him I was here. I said he had to go. I don't care if he speaks to me again. But I knew that wouldn't be the case. I knew eventually he would come around and talk to me. He might be mad in the beginning.
Or you may be like, hey, you saved my life. Like, I appreciate
right,
that.
yeah.
Right. So then I'll leave. John is still there for a little bit because we're like, well, we don't really want to leave her by herself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Friends.
So, he stayed for a little bit. Then she texts me and says, John's gone. And the kids got home from school. So like he was gone before the kids came in.
This is like 3 p.m. then.
It was before 3 that he
Before
was
3,
gone because
okay.
he saw the buses running and he left. And then I went to my meeting. I went to another appointment, and then I went to Kroger on Harper Road. And I just remember this so well. And I texted her and I was like, how's things going? You know, or how's things going?
Mhm.
And she said, well, my sister's here. We changed his clothes, and he wet himself. And I'm like flipping out. I'm like, he's wet himself. You know, like he's lost muscle control.
Which
like,
sister's there?
She never said
Okay,
who.
I think it was the older one.
I think it was Penny. But
Okay.
from what she had told me was both of them had been there. So I don't know if Wendy was ever there or was not there.
Gotcha.
I don't know. But she had said her sisters had been there. But the thing that had caught me was like they had changed his clothes. And I'm like, of course, this is 3 hours after I'm gone, you know? So I'm like, you know,
and
he still needs checked.
This is the timestamp from that message that they showed was 6 p.m. So this is like,
Well, there was a 4:30.
oh, was there another one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you
So you
get,
checked on him multiple times throughout the day, just being worried. And
Well, then after I left the house, it was like, because she had texted at close to 3 and said, John had left, the kids had gotten there. And she said something about Nikki talking to him.
Okay.
So then at 4:30, when I'm walking out of Kroger, I'm like, hey, what's going on? You know?
Right.
So then at 6:30-ish, she sent me a video of him.
Really?
Yeah.
And they
video? Did you get the
and they never showed this video during court. That's
which Josie's watching, and we probably won't show that, but it's a video of. Is he on the couch?
Yeah. Still sleeping.
Okay.
looks like, yeah.
And
Why would she do that?
I guess like because I got home and I was like, I wasn't right on my phone, you know what I mean?
Right.
So like I had missed the message by probably an hour or maybe, I don't even know, maybe not even an hour. But I was like, oh my gosh, you know, once I saw the video and I said, has he not gotten up at all? Like I was so confused.
Yeah.
You know? And she says, no. And I'm like, I'm worried. My next message is like, I'm worried. He needs seen. She's like, well, all these people were there, you know,
Trying to like, again, put the blame
and I'm
on
like,
them.
well, what are they saying? You know, and I'm not there. And she's like, well, they just think, you know, he needs to sleep it off. I'm like, what? So by then, the next thing I see is we're being flown to Charleston. And I'm like, well, when did you get there? This was probably like 8:45. She says about 45 minutes ago. And that's when she says blood sugar's 21. And I'm like, 21?
Yeah.
Like nobody should have a blood sugar of 21.
Sure.
A healthy person. And I'm like, that's very strange, you know? And so I said, well, do you want me to go with you? Like, I'm at home with Hunter. I'd been home with Hunter since like 4:35, whatever time after I got home from Kroger. And she was like, no, you stay home with Hunter. I said, my stepmom is here because she had come over too. And I said, she'll stay with him. I'll go with you to Charleston. And she was like, no, it's okay. She was even kind of like, they pumped his stomach at the hospital, she told me. They found coffee in his stomach. I said, why would he have coffee from 10 hours ago? Like, you know?
Yeah.
And I said, that's really weird, you know? And then they get to Charleston, like she's more worried about the coffee at the hospital, couldn't find coffee. And I was like, well, I'll come down, I'll bring you coffee. Like, what's going on? You know, and then I get a picture of him on the vent. So
You're getting pictures of him in ICU. Okay. Which
I think they showed those.
Did they show those? Okay.
There's they showed two. I don't know if she sent more. There's one where he's like surrounded by a bunch of like medical professionals. And then later in the day, it's like a close up. He's like in a neck brace. There's a vent. There's a bunch of other tubes. And it was, I think, sent to Jennifer as well.
Mhm.
It was, I think, sent to multiple. But yeah, it's him unconscious.
Right.
And I can't imagine what that's like receiving that.
And did you receive the initial? You received the initial photo of him on the floor, right? I don't know.
No, I did not.
You didn't.
Mm-mm.
Okay, that was to other people. Yeah. Goodness. Okay, so, what did you hear next after the Sugars 21? Did you end up going or
No,
you never went?
Mm-mm. She, we kept saying like, what's going on. That's when she was saying like, they were putting them in NCIU and NCSIU or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is. I can't remember, honestly. That's the next thing that she showed me.
Mm.
Okay. Well, she sent that to me and John in our group message. And,
what was your thoughts at that point? Did you think like it's bad, but maybe he'll recover?
Yeah, I kind of thought, well, it's going to be fine. I'm like, Mike's a strong person.
Mm-hmm.
He's, they're going to get him regulated and figure this out. And so just to then start saying like, he's not reacting to anything. He's in a coma. Like he's brain dead.
Mm-hmm.
Like even was like, the MRI shows no activity. Hardly EEG showed no activity. And I'm like, what is going on here? And then I'm saying like, this is weird for no injury, and, we kept trying to go and it was like, no. And then, so then she says they're moving him to hospice on Sunday. And then, he passes away early Monday morning.
Mm-hmm. And
then later we find out, or she says that she has made the arrangements. And I said, okay, when is this or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And she says, we're having the services Wednesday, but she says this was on Monday, and she says, but it's private. It's private services. She said, it's only for family. Like, and she said, it's only like for my parents, my sisters. And, Mike wouldn't have wanted his mom to come, but I went on ahead and invited her, but his dad is not coming. And I was just like, wow, because who's talked about that?
Right.
I was trying to, like, who has talked about that?
At his young age.
Yes. So I'm like, I don't even know if John knows my wishes, and so I'm at work and I'm making comments to one of my coworkers because she knows them she goes to church with Natalie's mom. And I'm making comments about it. And she's like, that's strange. And I said, well, there's all these kids. Like there was other people asking me about it. There's all these kids that like he had coached and he meant a lot to them. And, and so when my friend, and I'm not going to bring up names, but we're at work together and she's like, why don't we ask her to like, because I had this white fence in front of their house. Why don't you ask her about like taking a section of that fence and like putting like a little memorial?
Yeah.
And it wouldn't bother her. Nobody would stop in on her, but we would put a little memorial up there at that fence where kids could come and drop off stuff, like something if they were in memory of Michael. And I said, and she was like, no, he would not want anything like that. So I'm like, okay. And again, none of it was odd. I guess odd for us, maybe. But given them, like John said, they were just so private. And that's what you had to understand. And even things, like, I don't know. I even said to Chris Davis, we were talking to him while Michael was in the hospital. And I had said it many times. I'm like, do you think because we thought they were running this legit business with guns coming in and things like that. And I said to Chris, I said, with her having cancer,
which we'll get into.
Yeah. And the kids staying sick, because one of the kids stayed sick consistently.
Oh.
And then Mike, with this going on, I was like, do you think something's coming in off of these shipments that they're getting exposed to? And he's like, I never thought about that, so I'm thinking deep in this thing. But so the services are Wednesday where, we can't go. And I said to her, to me, that's fine. I probably can't get off anyway. But I was like, John would probably really like to come. But she said it's private. So,
man,
Wednesday that happens. So Friday, she's sending me pictures Saturday of her bedroom remodeled, basically repainted, new stuff in there. And she had been, to TJ Maxx and gotten, and she's like, I just can't look at the bedroom the same without Michael. And I thought, well, okay, people deal with death differently.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay. So another one of my friends says, I hear she's remodeled, because she didn't like her at all. I hear she's remodeled her bedroom. What's up with that?
Shout out to that friend.
And I
Good
said,
radar.
I said, well, they're private.
Right.
People handle things differently. But this was, so I can't remember. I think it was at the house that day. She had told me that he hadn't been sleeping well. And she had given him a Xanax that night before to help him sleep. She told me that.
Oh, February 5th.
Yes.
She gave him a
Xanax to help him sleep. So, when they're getting ready to fly to fly him to Charleston, I'm like, are you okay? I'm asking her, how are you holding him? Because at the house, she was calm as could be. I'm thinking she's not worried about it. I don't know why I'm flipping out about it. She has seen him do this before. So she's medical. She's smart enough.
Right.
And,
you didn't, the financial scheme didn't unravel till after this. So you didn't have any reason
I had
to kind of,
no reason. So, she says to me, I said, are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine. I took a Xanax before I came to the hospital. So I'm like, okay. So a few weeks later, I'm talking to my friend that I work with at, that's a PA as well. And she says, so I hear that she was acting really weird at the hospital, no emotion and things like that. And I kind of took up for her. I was like, well, she did take a Xanax before she went to the hospital. So that's probably why she was kind of mellowed out.
She done a couple green beans in the bathroom,
So I'm like, I think that's what it is, that's what it is.
Yeah, that was a joke. Sorry.
And she was like, okay, whatever. So, we had sometime in April, again, we're still texting. Well, let's rewind for 1 second. I'm sorry. There's so much stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So much stuff.
Listen, we got all day.
And John, so a lot of this, he's quiet over here. He knows about it because I told him each time it was going on.
Sure.
But he wasn't there in person per se. So most of the stuff after Michael was between me and Natalie, as you can tell by the binder.
Yeah.
But, so on Monday, okay. So he passes away. They have service. She's redone the bedroom on Monday.
Naturally.
Yeah. On Monday, I'm working locally. So she asked me if I want to meet her at the Dish for lunch. And I'm like, sure. So go to the Dish. I show up there. Her mom brings her. Her mom goes into the bar side of the Dish, and sits down. And her sister Wendy is there. And so they're going to have lunch. So I'm sitting in the other room, which I didn't know that. And so Natalie comes over there and sits down at the booth. I see her mom go, and I was like, where your mom gone? She's like, oh, well, she's meeting Wendy. And I was like, well, go to sit with us. That's fine. And she's like, no, she was just going to give us a chance to talk. So she sits down and immediately she says, I'm sure you want to know what happened at the hospital. And I said, no, I wasn't coming to ask you questions about Michael's death. Like, that just happened. Like, why would I?
Right.
And I said, I'm here for like support, friend support. You know, you asked me to meet you for lunch. So I'm gonna, you know, I'm here for you as a friend. So she starts talking about like the events of the hospital. He took these supplements, overdosed on them. And randomly, she says, you know, bodybuilders take insulin. And I'm like, no, I've never heard this. Why? And she explains the course of it. And I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. So I'm like, what are you saying? I'm like, are you saying, because she's been talking about these supplements, I'm like, are you saying that these supplements have insulin in them? And she's like, yes. And I'm like, so the supplements from Mexico have insulin in them? And she's like, yeah. And I
That's
said, well,
not what she said.
she did.
Oh my God.
And I said, well, I know you told me that they have clomid in them. I said, I'm really curious about these supplements. I want to see them.
Oh, that's how it ends up getting.
So I said, and here's the thing. I've been in Mexico on a medical tour. Okay, so I've been in pharmacies in Mexico. I actually had surgery in Mexico.
I mean, there's tons of great things going on in Mexico. People go there for stem cells. You know, it's not like...
They are very advanced and people don't know that. And it was an awesome experience. I mean, I probably shouldn't say this because I do practice medicine in West Virginia, but it was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had, you know, honestly. And so I'd done my research though, of course, you know, and I was comfortable with my decision. But I was in the pharmacy in Mexico and I'm thinking, I've never seen this before. So I'm curious, you know? So she says in this time frame, she's like, well, do you think that John would take them like to the state lab and have them test them so we could see what all was in those things? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure he would, you know, like bring them to me and we'll get it figured out. So that was that meeting. So, you know, lunch is over, we leave.
Great lunch. See you tomorrow.
Yeah. So, you know, then there's more texting throughout, stuff like that, stuff about her cancer. Then we meet again for lunch, like at a later session. I think this was more like into March. And this time her mom comes and she sits with us. And this one was bizarre because her mom's sitting there and she's like, so did she tell you what happened? And I'm like, no, you know, like she's got all smiles and she's like, Natalie just won like the top gun salesman woman of, you know, of the government. She's like, they're going to use her for the gun sales for the wall that's being built for Mexico.
Oh,
and I'm like,
God,
really? And she's like, yeah, isn't that awesome? Like, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. You know, like I'm thinking, okay.
And you had invested a little bit by then too.
Oh yeah. So I'm like, well, that's awesome, you know. And Natalie's like, yeah, we need to talk more about the medical side and we want to expand this. And I want to move it into another state like Tennessee and stuff like that. So that was at that meeting though. But her mom is like, you know, she's on and on about this.
They're going to put a plaque on the wall in front of Tijuana.
Yeah.
Like, hey, look.
So meanwhile, probably a few weeks later, where she's telling me like how her hair's coming out from her treatments. She's sending me pictures. She cut her hair off.
Oh, okay.
And I
she shaved it?
No, it was
so
just
she didn't go full.
Yeah, it was like longer, and then it was like up to here.
Got it.
Sorry. So I'm like, there's these really good vitamins that I had been getting from Amazon, and they're for like, you know, hair loss and growth. And I'm like, you cancer people take them.
Not from Mexico.
Not from Mexico. Actually, you can buy them at Ulta too. And so I'm like, I've got an extra bottle. I'm like, I'll drop you off some. You can start trying them. I haven't even opened this bottle. So you start trying them. So I stopped by her house to drop off those vitamins. And her mom is there. And comes into the foyer where we're sitting there talking, and she's like, look what Natalie got today. And she's holding up a letter from Joe Manchin's office. And she's like, Senator Joe Manchin, he sent her a letter today congratulating her on the success of her small woman-owned business. And she's doing a great job. And I mean, I didn't like get the letter in my hand. I just saw like the
Right, well, you're not
letterhead
looking at it for proof. You
I'm like,
assume
okay,
it's
yeah,
real,
no, cool. I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's awesome.
How awkward. It's like, okay, yeah, she's like 40. I mean, yeah, good job. Way to
Yeah.
live life.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So, that's like the bizarreness of like the things that were like come into play.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
Dude.
And I remember as after everything's kind of already come out, and Jason, one of the contractors, he's talking to me, and he said, man, he said, I remember, her telling me how you guys got them a state police contract for your new guns, for your Glocks. And I said, what are you talking about?
Wow.
And he said, whenever the government shutdown was on, she said, that's how they got through, was they sold state police Glocks. And I said, we just got brand new Glocks.
Yeah, and they weren't from her.
Yeah, that's exactly. Because I mean, like, it was like the next year,
Mhm.
the Nana was saying that I guess that she sold it to them.
It's like this illness of, I mean, she's just wanting to get caught.
Mhm.
I mean, these are things that is never, like, she knows that lie is never going to. But it's like the Betsy Britland thing.
Yeah.
I feel like literally she's just doing these things that she knows and she gets this excitement from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a rush or something.
I remember her telling me that she, I was still like in student loan debt. And it was like, that was kind of the sell too. Like,
Mhm.
you're going to stay home with Hunter. You're going to pay off your student. She's like, I paid off my student loans. I'm debt free. But then when the bankruptcy court came up, when she filed bankruptcy, her student loans were listed on there. And I was like, you literally told me that
They
were paid off. So that was just,
Right.
And she
Mhm.
literally told you she was giving you a government contract.
I know.
yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, everything is, what do you believe?
Mhm.
Okay. I don't know what you believe with this lady. I mean, but I can see how, eventually the house of cards
Mhm.
is going
It's
to
gonna
fall.
crumble. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of, it did in the most biggest way it ever possibly could.
Well, she, so then John, I guess sometime in April, I want to say mid-April-ish, mid to later April, Bledsoe reaches out to John that he needs to talk to us. And so John went and talked to him first. And then he had reached out. Well, I had to work the day that he wanted to talk to me. So he showed up at Med Express to talk to me. And this is when I kind of was like, what's going on? I mean, not at this point, but like, he started asking me a bunch of questions about the events of the day. And I remember, I told him everything. Like I didn't have anything to hide, And back to when I had stopped by that house, and gave her the vitamins, I asked her then, I'm like, you wanted me to get those supplements for
Mhm.
John to take. And she's like, oh, I gave them to the doctor. So I thought, oh, okay. Like maybe she decided to go ahead and take them and let them check them out, see what was going on.
Right.
So, he comes in, he's questioning me, what happened that day and just different things. And at the end of it, I'm like, why are you asking me all this stuff? I'm like, which I had nothing to hide. I mean, I told him the same thing I said in court. Like, I've never said anything different. I didn't have anything to hide. I didn't feel like, and I had close friends that I had told some things to. Just like the Xanax the night before,
Mhm.
her taking Xanax at the hospital or before she went to hospital, things like that. And I didn't know it was a case. You know what I mean? So we're talking and I said, why are you asking me about this? I said, because the more questions and more questions. And I'm like, do you think that she did something to him? And he's like, well, no. He said, we're just trying to check it out because if the kids would ask down the road what happened to their dad, we want to have an answer for them. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, because that's crazy if you think that she did. Like, I'm still in this blinder side. That's crazy. They were always together, like, why would, and he adored her. Like, he really did. To talk about her, like when he was talking about her with the business and things like that. I mean, he just like beamed,
Sure.
and they were always together. So I'm like, this is weird. Well, she found out that he had come and talked to me. And so she's like, was really mad about it. And she was like, well, they've already questioned John. Like, why would they have to go and ask his wife? And basically, like, I should have not talked to him and stuff like that. And I said, why would I not talk to him?
Yeah.
Like, what? There's nothing going on, And I said, to refuse it, I said, if somebody comes and asks me questions, like anybody,
Yeah.
about anything, anyway, what did you do yesterday? Why would I'm like, John, in his position, could you imagine that? Like,
You said, no.
No. Yeah.
they went
I don't
back
wanna
and
talk to
said
you.
Hamilton's wife wouldn't talk to us. Like, how would that look?
Right. Well,
like,
and on Bledsoe's standpoint, he doesn't know he's trying to piece together who's involved.
He is.
Yeah.
And so, and it was fun. The interview was fun. Like, I told him the events of the day and he was like, okay. And then nothing else was said, and, then again, like the beginning of May, I'd given her another check. Well, then she starts saying stuff like, I guess they had questioned someone else. I can't remember who it was. And she's basically, and she asked me, she's like, what did he ask you? And I was just like, the events of the day, like what happened? She's like, what did you tell him? And I said, well, I just, I told him what you told me, that he had a seizure. He had taken supplements from Mexico. And she goes, nobody knew about the supplements at Mexico, not even the hospital. And I thought, that's weird. You told me a few weeks ago you turned him into the doctor. Like, you told them that. So I'm thinking, what's going on here? So then I thought, well, maybe she told the family doctor about them and that's who she turned. So then I kind of thought, well, okay, maybe I'm just overreacting here.
Sure.
But she kind of flipped out about that. And
Wow.
then she wouldn't talk to me for a while. Like, there was a few days she quit talking to me. And so I finally reached out and I was like, I don't know what you're upset about with me about, but like, I've been a good friend to you. And so they come and question me. And I don't know why you're upset with me. And she says, because they are trying to put me in prison and I'm just trying to spend what time I have left with my kids. And then I'm like, what do you mean? That's odd. That's an odd statement.
Yeah.
I'm like, first of all, if you didn't do anything, what do you have to worry about? Like, they have to prove you did something.
Right. Talk to all my friends. They'll tell you I didn't do anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And I said, like, I know I didn't do anything. I'm not worried about talking to anybody. Why are you worried about it? If you didn't do anything, what are you worried about?
That's how honesty works. I'm free to talk because I have nothing to hide.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I did reach out to Bledsoe and I told him that. I was just like, this is very weird. Like, that she said this. She's upset with me. And he's, he didn't really say much. He just said, because he can't really tell me about them. But I just said, just an FYI. Like, I don't know what's going on. Well, my friend, like I mentioned before, that I worked with, she had talked to some people. And like I said, she knew about her acting weird at the hospital. But she had talked to some other people that were friends with Michael as well. And I think she had been asked, well, she kind of became like obsessed with with it. And she was asking around about the death and stuff.
Mhm.
Well, so somebody went back and told Natalie that, she was asking about it. So she texts her and she says, if you want to know something about Michael's death or me, my business, then you need to reach out to me. And so her response was, and I'm not going to say her name, but that's for her to tell her story. But she says back, well, I don't need to talk to you, basically. Like, I know about your Xanax. Well, she flipped her lid over that text. Natalie did.
Oh,
Right.
gosh.
So she starts texting me. What does she know about Xanax? She's talking about, what did you tell her about Xanax?
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, what she's talking about is that you were acting weird. They were saying you were acting weird at the hospital.
Mhm.
And I said, well, probably because you took a Xanax before you went to the hospital.
Right.
So that's what she's talking about. That's what she knows. So she says, no, I don't believe that. She said, benzos showed up in Michael's drug screen at the hospital, and nobody knew that except for the hospital. So she tells me that. Okay. I didn't know that. She didn't tell me that at any point that they showed up in the. I mean, I knew she had given him one, and I said, I knew you gave him one the night before. But I also know if you take one the night before, it's not going to show up in a drug screen 24 hours later
Mhm.
because their half-life is like 8 hours. And so he would have had to have more throughout the day for it to be on the drug screen.
Right.
And you don't know at this point that he's allergic either, do
No,
you?
I don't have his chart. I never saw
Yeah.
his record. I never knew, like,
You were never treating him at all
No.
or anything. Yeah.
So the only thing that I did know about him was he was having trouble with ringing in his ears. And hindsight, I mean, low blood sugars.
Sure. I have a
I
lot
mean,
of ear
but
ringing.
Yeah. And back at the time, I would have thought that. You know what I mean? Like he was
Sure.
thinking she was killing him with insulin slowly. And I had recommended him to go get a hearing screen because when I did ENT practice, when a person experiences tinnitus, ringing in their ears, I'm giving a freebie here.
Hey, let's go.
When a person experiences tinnitus, it's usually hearing loss. So what happens is you are missing that level of hearing because, you have different decibels of hearing. You're missing a level of hearing and the brain replaces it with another noise. So some people will talk about like static on the TV. They'll talk about ringing. They'll talk about chirping, birds chirping. So I recommended the hearing screen. I'm like, well, you might be losing some hearing,
Mhm.
Right.
So that was the only thing I had to do with ever anything about his care was, saying like, you need hearing screen.
Sure.
So, anyway, so back to that Xanax, she says that it's in his drug screen. And that kind of caught me off guard because I didn't know that. And I did know about the night before. So it then concerned me because it shouldn't have shown up that next night.
Mhm.
So I reached out to Bledsoe again. And he's like, oh,
Mhm.
and he never really, I think later than he confirmed, yes, it was on his drug screen, but like, he just went, he's still piecing together. But then I told him, like, she had told me she gave him one the night before and how I didn't think it should be on his drug screen that next night.
Sure.
So she flipped her lid. And so she starts saying that my friend had gotten his medical records from Raleigh General, broke HIPAA. She was sure that she had called Raleigh General, requested his records, and had them sent to her saying she was his PCP. And she was accusing me and her of getting his medical records.
Which is huge if you're a medical.
Yeah.
That's huge.
So,
You'd lose your certification,
yeah.
right?
So, back to Chris saying that she filed the ethics. So
Yeah,
she
yeah,
filed a
she's-
complaint. She filed a complaint on me and this other person at
Really?
MedExpress for HIPAA.
She's very vindictive. It's a pattern of when she starts to get caught, she starts firing off legal.
And that's it. Like, and that's the kind of manipulation and hold that she has over people is she's kind of intimidating in that she's soft spoken, but I'm better and I know more than you. And like, I'm going to go after you. So, anyway, and that was kind of like her demeanor the day of at the house was like, I know what's going on with him.
I know he's fine.
And you're not going to tell me that he's going to the hospital. You know, like she didn't like that we said that he had to go to the hospital and she kept
controlling.
controlling the narrative on that. But like, basically, like, I'm going to let him sleep it off. If he gets worse, I will take him.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm like, okay, bye.
And she knew brain damage was going to occur. She just had to wait long enough.
Well, when you know what you gave him, then you know what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah. And she's trying to, like, the alibi thing. Like, okay, here, look, I tried my best.
So when I caught her lies was, so I get a call from MedExpress from our HR in Morgantown. And she says, you know, there's been a HIPAA complaint filed. A lady has called, said that you guys may have accessed her deceased husband's records. And I'm like, I know exactly who you're talking about.
Who else?
You're talking about Natalie Cochran and Michael Cochran. And no, we did not. I'm like, nobody has accessed his records. Like, and she said, well, did the other person ever tell you that I'm going to get his medical records? I'm like, no. And she goes, do you think that she did? And I said, no. You know, I said, we've worked too hard for this. And we're professionals. Like, we're smart enough to know not to do something that dumb and risk your license. Like, that's big, you know? So she says, well, we're calling in legal team. We have to do an internal investigation. So I was like, perfect. Because it's a paper trail on EHR. You know who exactly accessed records. So, and we both were called. Well, I call her immediately after I get off the phone with MedExpress, but she doesn't answer. She's on the phone with her web designer, which we know who that was.
Oh,
so
She's about to be like, listen, bish,
yeah,
I got something to say.
I'm kind of mad because, so I said, well, I just got off the phone with MedExpress. I send this in text. I never mentioned your name. I never mentioned you. And I was like, yes, you did.
There's no other way.
They told me that you told them that she had told them that I said this other person accessed the records. So she specifically name dropped that I had told her that. And I was like, you did bring me into this. And she was like, no, I didn't. I never said your name. And I'm like, they have too many employees just to like pick out random people, you know, to call up. So she did, in fact, accuse me too. So we went under this internal investigation. Of course, you know, a week went by. They call us back. We didn't find anything. Nobody broke HIPAA. Nobody's accessed his chart. I'm like, I would have no reason to access his chart unless I'd seen him there myself. So, and the same thing with this person. We didn't even know he had ever been there.
Even still, why is she so guarded? You know?
Yeah.
Right.
Like, okay.
So we had to go through that internal investigation. And then, so that is things that has happened. And then it made me like, you know, like she's not telling the truth about things. And, you know, then it was like, the money and the check bouncing. And then it was, oh, here's another good lie that we caught her in.
Nice.
And it's something small, but it made you like quickly open your eyes that you were like, dang, you know?
Very telling.
It was closer to our birthday. Well, our daughter adored her, you know? And so, she told Allie that she was going to take her to whatever restaurant for her birthday. Okay. And Allie's favorite was Fujiyama's. So she's
Shout
like,
out.
Yeah.
Very good.
So she said that's where she wanted to go.
Mhm.
So they were planning to go such and such day at this time. I was going to take Allie to meet her, whatever, so that she could take her. And so she texts me, that same day, that evening. She's like, I'm in Huntington trying to work out this money mess with my lawyers where they have my accounts messed up. Tell Allie I'm super sorry. I'm not going to make it back in time. We'll plan another day. And I was like, okay, by then. So by then it's already almost time to go that we were supposed to go. So we're just like, well, we're just going to go ahead and take her. So we go to Fujiyama's. We eat. She then texted me and said, I'm just now leaving Huntington. And we're leaving, we were getting ready to leave Fujiyama. So we leave Fujiyama, we get to Beaver. So we're talking 20 minutes between the text. She said she was just leaving Huntington. And we get to Beaver at Little General. She's at Little General talking to Treadway.
And to put in perspective
in the parking lot.
People not around here, Huntington's what, about an hour and a
40
half?
minutes,
Yeah.
45 minutes.
At
probably.
least, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, I said, pull in there. Because we passed, we saw them sitting over there talking.
We gonna fight.
I said, pull in there. I want her to see us because she literally texted me 20 minutes ago saying she was leaving Huntington. And that's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it was just that. And then when we pulled in, she goes, she texted me, she saw us. And I said, I had to get out and use the bathroom. So anyway, so she texted me and she goes, I just pulled in and had to drop off something to Thomas. And I'm like, yeah, 20 minutes from Huntington, leaving Huntington. I've caught you,
Nicole, that text didn't send until later, I seen it an hour
she
ago.
did say something about her phone and something about her text messages just going through and something.
Huntington has decent service. There's no little
it was
spot
just
where
and that was I wanted to say that when, at the end at the Mercy when Tom was like, well, how did she lie to you? So I had that on the tip of my tongue because I know that's small, but that was
no, it's telling.
That's a lie.
Constant.
And that was an example of somewhere where we just caught her. But the Mercy thing kind of off-guarded me because I thought it would be like what we did at Federal. We could just say what we wanted to say.
Yeah.
So I had all this stuff planned out. And then they question you. So, and then objections. And then
aren't you mad at Natalie? Isn't that why?
I'm not mad at her. Well, I'm not.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You weren't there.
I don't like her actions.
Right.
So, and that's what he wanted to keep bringing into it was that you're just mad at her. You don't like her. That's why you're here. Is that, no minus everything else that she drug us into, plastering us in the newspaper that we did this or that. Trying to cover up her tracks by saying, we were there, we did this. And at one point she had, she had been telling me she had CLL. And that was the new diagnosis. I think I sent you those text messages. And
I got them on
some more stuff to send you.
Oh, we're going to do some receipts. We got a receipt section coming up for people. So,
and she said, she had CLL. And as I said, my mom worked in pathology. And I grew up exposed to pathology and how that worked. And the doctor that she worked for, he did bone marrow biopsies. And he is honestly he never saw patients to see them and talk to them per you and me, but he did bone marrow biopsies and he did pathologies, of course.
Right.
So he wasn't a treating physician, but that man was the smartest physician I've ever known in my life. And so he could answer anything about anything.
Yeah.
But he taught me a lot, actually. And so even minus PA school, I knew that you had to have a bone marrow biopsy to learn about leukemia. My grandfather passed away from leukemia. My aunt passed away from multiple myeloma, which is another blood cancer. And so of the bone marrow. So,
and a bone marrow, that's not an easy,
no, they have to go in to your tip and pull out, bone marrow samples.
There's a pretty noticeable scar.
That's your biggest supply that they have to get it from. So, I'm asking well, when did, and she's telling me like she was just diagnosed, but they ran tests on her when she was at the hospital and they just let her know. And I'm like, when were you in the hospital? And she says November. And I'm like, this is January. They're just now telling you they ran those tests. But I'm like, did they do a bone marrow biopsy? I mean, like, how would they know it's CLL? And how did they know you're staging? And, and it was like, oh, well, I'm going to Duke. I'm going to, no, CAMC diagnosed me. But I have an appointment with Cleveland Clinic. And then Cleveland Clinic didn't work out. So then her PCP was telling her to go to the ER to force them for treatment. And I'm like, but you've never had a bone marrow biopsy. So how like your treatment, and she's like, oh, they're going to do that at Duke. And then she went to Duke. And then it was like, well, the doctor that does the bone marrow biopsies wasn't there that day. So she's only there one day a week. So I've got to come back for that. And then it was like my heart rate's messed up. So they couldn't do it. And then it was next. Then it flipped from that to she had myelofibrosis. And that's another type of cancer, kind of the bone marrow. But you also have to have a bone marrow biopsy for that as well. And then she said, Duke was leaning towards this myelofibrosis. CAMC had said CLL. And
I have the CLL text up for everybody that you can see.
And, she said that she didn't, then it was like, I don't need a bone marrow biopsy. They said that it's myelofibrosis. And I'm like, okay, like maybe I'm behind. Like maybe there's new things that they do it by.
Right. Finger stick.
Yeah. Cause I don't work at the cancer center. So, but I do know a little bit about, of course, if we see things off with patients and their blood work and things like that, we're sending them to the cancer center, to the hematology. So then they figure that out. But, that was all. And then it was like, all of a sudden, then we're getting radiation. And I'm like, what are they radiating for CLL? Like I'm confused about that.
Oh, is that not a common treatment for?
Not always. I might be wrong on that, but like everybody that I've ever known that had like CLL or is getting some form of like chemotherapy or maintenance,
sure,
treatments, things like that. Not necessarily bone marrow unless you have a mass somewhere else, like your spleen or something, like.
Because radiation is like a targeted thing that they, like you said, target a mass and a certain.
Right.
It's not the whole body. Usually.
Right. Because once you radiate an area, you can't radiate that area again. So you can never have radiation to that area again. So that was like, I kept asking questions. I guess I asked too many questions. There was even a thing where
she's Googling like, I don't know the answer to this one. Let me get it.
But there was even a thing where she sent us a link that they were doing. They were having people to test to see if they were a match for her bone marrow.
Right.
Me and John did a swab. We got a test kit.
Wow.
No, you didn't.
Yes, we did. We did a swab, sent it back. Of course, I never heard anything.
Had Michael
of course
passed away by then? And she's crowdsourcing.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it was like, I'm in remission.
Yep, which I'll bring up. So you get the cancer text after Michael, but did you hear about cancer before Michael? Okay.
Because Michael knew about that.
Right.
That was on January 14th, I believe. She told me she had CLL.
Okay, yeah, I got it says if blood work is still good on Friday, the chemo is over.
And that was in April, right?
Yeah.
Is that what that says?
And you said, no way, yay, praying so hard, was it good today? And then she said remission, and you're pumped, yay. And then she said they think radiation took care of it, and said, yes, a few rough days. But that's basically, proven, she mentioned to people she was on active chemo and mentioned CLL, and it was a whole thing.
And she was having to take steroids because of the chemo. And, it's funny because there was a time that she, she was kind of put on some weight. I'm not like body shaming that, but like she had put on some weight. So she's like, I'm on steroids for chemo. And I'm like, okay, and, I do know people have side effects to the chemo and they do sometimes give them steroids.
Right.
But, I mean, I've seen that. I've seen patients, like my primary care patients, come back and they've been on low dose of steroids because of some side effects or rashes are common with chemo and things like that.
Right.
I mean, not a lot because prednisone can drop your immune system and it drops your white blood count. So, you're really careful with what you do give them because they're already immunosuppressed,
Right.
obviously, when they're getting chemo. So you have to be careful what you are. But I'd even bought her when she got the myelofibrosis. I think I sent you that picture, and you can use that. I don't care.
Sure.
My daughter.
I don't know if I got that one. Let me make sure.
But
while people, for the audio crowd, the text I brought up that I didn't verbally say earlier, Stephanie said, "What type of leukemia do you have? How can I help?" She said CLL, chronic
lymphocytic leukemia.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. What Stephanie said. Just pray for me, girl. Big hugs. Praise Lord. It's me and not the kiddos. Just thankful for that. And then you said, OMG, what? I'm shocked. It will be all good. How long has it been since you were hospitalized? And then she talks about breaking her arm. And then she didn't know they were testing and this and that. So, yeah.
And then I had gotten her shirts made. Like, I have a neighbor that makes like shirts and things like that. So I had messaged her and I was like, so I would like to have some shirts made. I paid for them out of my pocket, like for all of her family and friends.
Just supporting her.
Yeah. And so I had, done that. My daughter wore one to school. I mean, it was just like, because like, I don't know. And it wasn't for a fundraiser. Like even our friend, we're friends with, I don't want to name drop people.
Sure. Yeah.
We're friends with somebody that owns a Mexican restaurant. And he had even asked me when he saw like that whole thing, he's like, hey, do you want to do a fundraiser for them? Like, I hate that, like we can do a night fundraiser. And I'm like, yeah, we'll look at that too, like, so that's the things that was going on.
Yeah.
It just shows though that like she was trusted in the community. Like everyone trusted her. You guys trusted her, friends. Like everything she said, you didn't have a reason to like doubt it.
No, not until, about May of 2019. Then it was like, oh Lord. Well, while you're looking for some messages that are pertaining to important ones that we need to show receipts of, Stephanie, John, that kind of lays everything out. I don't think we missed much, but can you tell me about yours and Michael's friendship? Like, I really just want to know about him as a person.
Mike was a great guy. Now, Mike was one of the people that was at first hard to get to know. But I mean, once you got to know him, Mike was just one of the best friends you could ever have. I mean, he really was. Mike was a great coach. He was good with kids. And, it just hurts me whenever, people get up there and they say, oh, well, he couldn't keep a job because he couldn't really be around people. It's like, what?
Sure.
He's been teaching or he's been coaching ball for forever and this and that. So, I mean, how does he not get along with people?
Sure. Bring that mic close to your mouth.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. So what was your experience during the trial, hearing certain things that you did you hear some things that you were like, wait a minute, that's not what I remember? Oh, yeah.
Whenever his kids got up there and were saying stuff, I mean, that was just, that just completely just turned me off because wherever those kids were, whenever they were smaller, especially his son, he coached that kid all through, little league, wherever he was at. Mike was there coaching that kid.
Sure.
Nikki was right there too.
Yeah. Which they were young.
Yes.
When he, I think they were
10 and 13.
Yeah. So, who knows what their experience has been these last several years. But yeah, I felt like we didn't really leave the trial, at least, except till the mercy phase. Obviously, when Donna got up there and you all got up there expressing your love for him, didn't really feel like he was brought up much. It was just a lot of frustration on my part, just hearing objection all the time, which I know that's their job to do certain things. But it must just be surreal for you all just to be like, man, this is this is crazy just to live through all this.
Oh, yeah.
And to be setting through it, you know?
Oh, yeah. It's just glad that he finally got the justice that he deserved.
Yeah. And I'm glad they got it right. And being a diabetic, watching the trial, and especially, I think a lot of the insulin questions were brought up while Stephanie was up there, and they'd be like, okay, well, how big's a unit? And you're like, or they'd ask Stephanie, well, how much insulin could kill somebody? And Stephanie's like, well, it depends on the body type and stuff like that, which it does. But I don't think, I think non-diabetics didn't really grasp, like, it don't take much.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a needleful, and there you are.
Well, yeah, and it's just like, them trying to portray Steph like she basically showed up with like a hospital bed and this and that to take care of him like that day. We went over as friends.
Mhm.
I mean, I wasn't working. She wasn't working.
Sure.
We just went there as friends to help out another friend.
Yeah. Yeah. And hearing the environment just makes total sense of like this control she had on her world. And eventually the lies were just so silly that it's like, I mean, this is just dumb. The wall thing is the best thing I've ever heard. So it's nuts. But as far as timeline, is there anything we missed, Josie? I think we pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I guess the only thing would be that one of the items that was admitted into evidence was the steroid injection that you prescribed. What's it called?
Medrol.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then was it like when you heard the FBI say this was never punctured?
Well, I haven't got I still haven't seen
Okay.
that.
But yeah, that was one of the items that was admitted into evidence. They tested it, and the guy that I guess looked at the container itself was like, "Oh, this was never punctured."
I mean, I'm like, why? I mean, what was the purpose?
Like why would she go and get that from you? Like,
but she had, kept saying that she was coughing. She said she had been diagnosed with pneumonia.
mhm.
And she said, the coughing is a little worse. I'm feeling better, but the coughing's worse. Like, I think some more steroids would help. Would you give me some steroids? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. No problem. I mean, I would do call and stuff for the hospital. So that was like, something. But basically what I've always done is I keep a chart at home on somebody if I have to call in. Cause back we used to have to, when I would do it for the hospital, I had no way to chart it until like you got there and you would have to say. So, but basically for me, I have to keep like you don't have to, but like I've always kept a running log, like, and I don't really do it that often, except for if it was on call or whatever, but I'd kept a log like based upon what she said the symptoms were and why I called in that. Right. I just always do that. And even for my on-call patients. And so that way, like if the pharmacy would call back and be like, or they had an allergic reaction to something, then you would have like that record, what we're using it for or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just, I jotted that down and I was like, well, I mean, most people, when they want steroids, they want a few like prednisone or something like that would be fine. She just said, so pills. And she says, no injectable. I said, okay, yeah, I usually use Decadron. And she said, Solumedrol. Solumedrol works best for me, she says. And I said, okay. So I said, okay, and I can come by and give it to you or whatever. And she said, oh no, I can self-administer it. I can, and I'm like, are you sure? She said, yeah. So, cause I'm thinking it's hard for me to give like myself a shot. Well, like insulin and stuff like that, that's sub-Q. So that's easier. But like when you're talking about Solumedrol or like shots of antibiotics or things like that are IM. So they have to go in the muscle. So it's either like, deltoid or in your butt, your glutes. So,
awkward. Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know how you're going to You know, that's kind of weird.
Well, so I'll tell you how. You put your arm up against the doorway and you pinch it out and then bam.
But you're
Well, that's
You used to do it-
insulin. That's sub
Well,
2.
okay. Well, you couldn't. So
Yeah.
you couldn't get it in this part right
You
here?
need it. It needs to be more like up here.
Ah, I got you. Okay. Okay.
So you're sure to get not
Mhm.
in the muscle
Got
and
it.
the fat tissue. But so I mean that I was like, okay, you know,
Mhm.
so I did.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's like
Mm-hmm.
then later, I mean, I think Tom told me later, you know, after saying he was like, you know, she didn't even use that. Cause I was like,
Yeah. But-
so what for?
I think because I take get like B12 shots, and like if you get a prescription from the pharmacy that is like needs injected, they'll just give you, if you ask, they'll give you needles. Is that
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Because
so? Like,
I mean, I get B12, but
Mhm.
I mean, I have the nurse at work
Right.
give it to me, but I get the prescription. But I mean, I technically
Mhm.
could do it at home.
Mhm.
I mean, I've given John shots for him at home that, you know, his doctor
Mm-hmm. yeah,
and knows that and is like, oh,
Right.
Steph can just give
Yeah.
you this at home. So like,
Yeah.
I'll just prescribe it. They gave me the needles. So
Mhm.
like, the pharmacy gives me the needles
Yeah.
with the prescription.
and it wasn't brought up, but like I know I made the connection that like if she's getting a prescription that close to when Michael falls unconscious, that like she has access to needles. Like there's no needles found, and it's not really mentioned, but like the only way to give that medication is through a needle. So like you have to have access to them.
Right.
Sure. Oh,
That's my last little point. Yeah.
wow. What else are we missing out? This is we've absolved all of this. I know we have some receipts, which we can
Mhm.
take a break and I can splice it in if you want to look for certain ones, Stephanie. But any final words, anybody, before
Well,
we check out of here?
I'd like to say this one there, and that's whenever all this stuff broke loose, we saw Donna down at Kroger's, and Donna didn't know us. And man, you know, she saw us and she started yelling at us. And listen, Donna's a wonderful person, and I completely got his time, but man, we just felt so bad because, you know, she wanted answers from us. And we were telling her, Donna, we can't talk to you about it right now because we've been told not to. And, you know, I just felt so bad for that poor woman.
Yeah.
But now, you know, Donna's wonderful.
Yeah.
We absolutely think the world of her.
That's good to know because Donna, you know, obviously it's her only son
Oh, yeah.
and all this. And you
And,
hear.
man, and that's just it. You know, you want to tell her everything you know,
Yeah.
Mhm.
but, you know, you just can't right now.
And if
Yeah.
you do, you may throw a wrench in the investigation.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was it.
So that's good to know.
Was that tough waiting
Yes.
those 5 years?
6 years of not being.
Oh,
able to
yeah,
walk.
exactly. And, you know, and like we said before, you know, you're just getting crucified out in the
Mhm.
community, this and that. I know we've heard anything and everything about us, you know, and it's just like, you know what, whatever, guys.
Yeah.
And you had to ignore that. And I mean, I'm a person, I mean, John doesn't care because the job he does is like
Tough.
a little different. Like
Right.
so it was hard for me because I like to people please.
Mhm.
And I, you know, it was really hard because, you know, I'm getting criticized and I'm like, it's not like that. And I want to fix it. And he's like, I don't care what people think about me, but I do,
Sure.
you know? And
I'm the same way.
he's like, I don't care because my job, they don't like, I mean, a lot of people don't like me anyway. But like, I mean, it's not
Well, I
just
love
him
you, John.
in general. But you know, the job, the job,
yeah,
you know how it
people
is.
feel about it.
Right.
And so, but John is like a straight shooter, of
Sure.
course. And you can hear that in his last statements in the mercy
Mhm.
trial. I'm not. I mean, I hear his stories and I know that evil exists, but like, I didn't want to believe evil exists. I mean,
Mhm.
I always try to see the good in everyone. And even, I mean, I've had people do horrible things to me. And throughout this thing, like, I have had people say some pretty bad things. Like, even the fact that I was friends with her and be like, well, we don't trust you because you were friends with her, you know, and I get that, but like, it was deep, you know,
Mhm.
and I want to see good in everybody. This was like, you don't realize, and he talks about it, but it's like, you don't realize how evil truly, and this was the first time it was like right in my face. And it truly was that, you know, it's evil,
Yeah.
you know, and that somebody was that capable and that he sees that, but I never could see that. I just had those blinders about people.
Yeah. And that's what I'm like, there's a lot of, you mentioned being a people pleaser. I think there's a lot of that going on. Like, you want to, you know, yeah, you want to invest in whatever, and she's taking advantage of it, but you want to help her too. And you want to just go along this life and have success, and everybody wants to, you know. So I totally see how this happened.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, and it's not only just you all, it was 9 other people that day that was in this world. You know, Chris Davis, his wife, it's something that, like you mentioned, it's just evil, and you're not expecting this to happen, and you couldn't imagine this ever happening, but it's literally the devil in southern West Virginia decided to.
Yeah.
And you know, at the time, that's whenever this stuff broke, that's whenever I was down with my rotator cuff. So, I mean, buddy, the only thing I had to do was sit around and think about it.
Yeah.
You know, and if it wasn't for people like Mark Horton and Danny White, Aaron Maddie, and, you know, some other people like that, you know, Bobby Elam and Chris Davis, I really don't know what I'd have did.
Yep.
Because, I mean, man, the only thing I had to do was sit around and think about this. You know, Juki Dotson, thank God for that man, too. I mean, that's who did my physical therapy for me. And I was so glad just every day to be able to go do that with Juki.
Now, I would imagine something like this really narrows down of like, oh, these are real people that stuck around. And because obviously you hear something like this and the brain just thinks, oh, well, they all were, you know, why ain't they talking? You know, they don't think about the investigation part of it. But then you start to figure out, like, you know, you had a lot of people, like you mentioned, that didn't turn their back on you. So that's beautiful in a way, too. I mean, obviously, you don't want any of it to happen. But
you learn who your friends are, that's for sure.
You do.
Because, I mean, you know, she lost friends, I lost friends.
Yeah.
But, you know, friends like that, I don't need them anyway.
I mean, yes, that's the thing. Kind of did you a favor, you know what I mean? It's like,
we did it out. But, you know, and there were, like I said, from the get-go, there were a couple people that I would tell things along the way. And just because, I mean, there were things, you know, just in conversation. And then when we were questioned, and I talked to Bledsoe probably 3 or 4 times throughout that, you know, after the first questioning. And he was like, I mean, even when your feelings were changing about her, you still didn't change your story. And going back, and I think about this a lot, even, you know, we've talked about it, and I talked to another provider that I worked with at work. Going back to the events of that day, in the same exact scenario that was that day, you know, back in that day, there's not a thing I would have changed. Not one thing. And I can honestly say that.
Right.
Now, it's easy for people to say that now, you know, knowing the case and how it rolled out. Heck yeah. I mean,
well, putting you
now
in that
you
same,
know,
putting you in that same mind frame, you would have done the same thing. If you knew now what happened, obviously.
Yeah. If I had any suspicion at that time, then yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But, you know, that's easy to judge when you know the facts now. But when you were there at that day, it's not. And I've said to providers, if you were, okay, you know, if I said to one of my friends recently, if I called you over to my house and John was sick, and me being medical, like she, you know, she's medical, Natalie was medical, you know, she's smart. So I'm like, and I told you, John has this going on and this always happens and we're okay. I'll take him later, whatnot. What would you think? And they were like, I wouldn't have questioned you. I would have been like, okay, cool. She knows what's going on, you know?
Yep.
And that was the scenario. But, you know, I did not have any suspicions that day, and it took me months she killed herself with it, with the texting and the freaking out afterwards, about everything, is when then the guilty started coming out, like, oh, something is wrong.
Yeah.
And maybe she did. And, this is all tying together and making sense.
Yeah. And that's, people are looking at now on that mountains of evidence, and they're saying,
Right.
why didn't they do, like, none of this was known.
No.
It was just
absolutely
like
not.
your friend calls you and says, hey, here's the deal. And they're a medical professional, and they say, yeah, he's been doing this, and
Yeah.
he just sleeps it off. And, so
But
that makes
John
total
is the
sense.
one that called. She didn't call me. John called me.
Right.
But also, I did go back and watch her sister's testimony, Penny's. And I did go back and watch. And I knew she was there hours after us. But also what made me think about her, and this is not bad, I just, there was something that she said in her testimony as well that Natalie had said to me that day. And she said, when he does this, he just sleeps it off. And she said that in her testimony. That caught my ears, because that's the same thing
and
that
she said
had said to us.
but she said it as a first person thing. Did she relay it like Penny said when he does this, or did she relay it as
Penny
Natalie said?
Penny said it in her testimony. And she said, she just said she's going to let him sleep it off like he always does.
Okay.
Like that's what was blinded to her as well. So I'm like, even her sister was blinded to what was going on,
Sure.
and she was there hours after us, so like it was fine. It was finally good insight to be able to get it out there. Like, Bledsoe just kept saying, trust the process. But it was able to get it out there that, some of the rumors flying, like, me and John weren't there all day and just let our friend die. That was one thing that come up. Like, someone had posted that on Facebook somewhere, like on a news report.
Oh,
like,
yeah. They should be charged and this and
we
that.
should lose our license.
I mean, our daughters told us, what people's, said at school and this and that. Oh, yeah, your mom and dad's going to get arrested. I'm like, for what?
That's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, for
And
what?
so,
Well, it's same for Chris and Jennifer too. Like people faulting for the
For her,
goodie
the
bag
insulin.
and stuff like
Yeah.
just being a good friend.
and that's just it. It's changed me a lot, though, honestly. Like, I've changed a lot. People knew me beforehand and people know me now. And unfortunately, for people that's come into my life now are having to reap different consequences than before, because the people that I'm close to now, like, had stuck through me through this.
Mm-hmm.
But the people coming into my life, I'm not trustworthy. I don't trust anyone. And that's unfortunate, but when you're taken advantage of and you're put in that situation, you have a whole different outlook.
Yeah. And maybe, taking away some of that vulnerability helps. Like, okay, well, because we all need to be a little guarded, but at the same time, you want to help your neighbors. You want to be friends. You want to be
Well,
West
that's just it.
Virginia.
You don't expect people you hang out with and
No.
at football games and eat pizza with and, just have a good time with to be a murderer.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. You don't expect them to, steal your money. And not only that, a couple $1.5 million was ultimately what was charged. Of course, there's more. Well, I think that's how much she owes. I think it was actually
2.5 is
Yeah.
what, she
And,
owes.
it just drives me crazy whenever, you got people up on a stand going, oh, yeah, well, Mike knew about it. How did he not know about it? Well, I'll tell you how he didn't know about it. Because he believed his wife.
He trusts his wife.
Yeah, he trusts his wife and he believed everything that she said. Because I've had people say, well, how did Mike not know? And I tell them, man, he worshiped her. Anything that she told him, he believed.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and a West Virginia staple is, this person handles the finances. This person handles, the work or whatever. Like there's a typical thing of not every marriage
Yeah.
is something where they're both accountants and they're working actively
Yeah.
together to, work through things.
Yeah.
All he knows is what you all are seeing, the nice vehicles, the money for vacations,
Yeah.
this and that.
Yeah,
So
exactly there. I mean, but Mike.
And he found out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm a firm believer in, that's why he is now deceased, is because he found out.
It's and there was evidence that the jury saw of them fighting the day before over money. I mean, a utility getting shut off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pretty apparent.
Yeah. And then, you got a big house like that. And I'm sure Mike just thought, that they were just, everything was fine.
Mhm.
Sure.
I mean, they got a beautiful house. They got nice vehicles. Mike thinks everything's just going great. And then that happens. And
It
he's
just
like,
shows you, like, you never know. It's like Facebook. You see all these smiling faces and all these people with all these new things and having a good time. And it's just a mask. Like, we don't really know what's going on unless we're living, you know. So it's kind of good for this whole area, West Virginia in particular, to be like, you know what? Maybe I got to kind of look into things a little more and kind of not just go so surface with everything. So maybe that'll help. I don't know, but crazy. So many revelations today.
I would say my final questions for you guys are, when you're on the witness stand, the 2 times you got to stare directly at Natalie. I know you didn't speak to her, but you got to kind of look her in the eyes. She didn't look you in the eyes, it didn't seem like. So just, what was that like, kind of seeing her for the first time after the convictions? And then there was the mercy phase. I think both of you, did you stay for the verdict for that?
No,
You didn't? Okay. But just, so after having looked her in the eye, what was that like? And then what was that like when you heard the verdicts for both?
It was really good. And I like to be a part of putting Natalie Cochran in prison.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that I got to be one of the last things that she got to see whenever she was a free woman, is me, one of the people that she tried to use to actually helping, no matter how much it was, if it's just a little bit, that I've got to put her in prison.
Well, y'all, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to do what y'all did.
Yeah.
And I think that gets lost because, you all were friends with Natalie and you said, you know what? I got to tell the truth and I'm going to, and we're going to see where it leads. And ultimately it led to, like, they couldn't have done it without you.
And that's just it, and that's what I've told everybody. I'm like, our story's never once changed. I said, hers is the one that's changed continuously.
Oh, yeah.
I want to give Ashley and Tom just the biggest kudos to you guys, because you guys did the best job ever.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot, yeah.
And Tom was also very entertaining with so when did it go wrong?
Right.
And the zero.
Yeah.
Yep. And when they got the case 4 months before the guilty verdict.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
I just cannot. And I want to thank them publicly. Hey, you got Michael Cochran justice that he so sorely has been missing for years.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. All right, so I figure it'd be best. We're going to end this with a little receipt session, y'all. So I got some. We did a little bit earlier, and I have some text brought up here that I'm going to walk through Stephanie with that she sent me. We're going to start first with February 7th, where Natalie was sending you text that says, looks like he had a heart attack, getting tropin levels back that keep raising. Oh, no. You said, oh, my gosh, maybe the reason he threw up. And then you asked any updates. And she said, I got a hold of anesthesia. They said MRI canceled, said no longer needed. WTF. I ripped a whole bunch of people. He should be next in line. OMG, are you kidding? Why did they cancel it? And who told them to? I don't know, but I'm furious. Yes, I would say so. So what's going on here?
Probably that's while he's in the hospital.
Mhm.
And they're trying to figure out like if there's activity and this and that. And she just randomly says that they think he's had a heart attack. And I'm like, where did that come from? Like seizure, the heart attack. But she said they're going to do like MRI. And then she said it was canceled. Well, I'm like, well, who would cancel that? Somebody had to tell the radiology not to do it. They don't get to make that decision.
Sure.
I mean, that would have to be. But then I guess coming back to that, in part of Donna's testimony, it was said there wasn't that MRI wasn't done, like that she didn't want it done. So
And she ended up at hospice. Yeah. Or
And
he
he-
ended up at
yeah.
hospice.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yep. And you got, I'm so sad for you, praying this works out. Do they know any reason why? And are they saying that he had a heart attack for sure? Natalie says yes. EEG showed little to no brain activity. You said, oh my gosh, what are they thinking? And then,
she could never directly answer me if you
Right.
see that.
Mhm.
sure.
Like, no actual, answer.
Mhm.
Like, it was just a fumble mess. Like, I can't figure out what's going on down there.
Sure.
Because everything's a different story.
Yeah. And it says, she said, yes, all of them, and no change, no response to pain. He's in a vegetative state. So to speak, waiting on MRI for definitive answers. And he was on lowest sedative possible. I'm afraid after MRI results, there may be some tough decisions to make. No muscle control, not breathing without a vent. So basically,
And what day was
she
it?
said he is an organ donor. So if he is in a state where it comes down to making decisions, I would rather save another life and pay it forward than having him brain dead. This is on February 7th.
Mm-hmm.
We have living wills and DNRs, and he has always said he will not live that way. Okay. It's a lot of information, not really showing much hope there, Natalie. Oh, I know. You said, oh, I know, but don't even think yet. Are you holding out okay? So you're already seeing like, what?
Why are we already thinking about that?
Yeah, and you're like,
You know?
this is a little weird.
Yeah.
Well, obviously more than a little weird, but
Yeah, talking about a will the day after.
yeah, he's an organ donor, so I'd rather save someone else than
Yeah.
golly.
Pay it
All right.
forward.
So it says later on, WBC, what's that?
White blood count.
White blood count down to 1.8 today from 5.3 since starting the chemo. They backed off my dose. Oh, this is cancer. Okay. So she's talking about her
she's
cancer.
talking about her cancer and he's in the hospital.
Okay, gotcha.
Like, I don't know when she went and had blood work done. He's in the hospital.
Yeah, she said
Well, she's already there, right? Might as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was thinking too.
Why not?
Okay. They drew your labs too.
well,
Yeah.
this is key because we found out later Dr. Halsey, Duke admitted that she was never admitted because she was never confirmed to have CLL and they don't
Right.
accept patients. So this text literally says, started the chemo, they backed off my dose till I can get back to Duke. And you said, like a good friend, okay, please take care of yourself. And she said, I will. I'm going to get some sleep. I think. Love you, girl.
See, maybe Dr.
Besties.
Halsey needs to see that message.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I mean,
it clearly says they went to Duke.
Yeah.
what he said, I think
I need to go back and watch his.
me
as well.
and me and Josie was talking like, why did they call him? He was awful for the defense.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, don't
Yeah.
think he just like
No, but that
dismantled her
was
case.
awesome.
It was
good,
awesome
yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
But the defense called him.
But I was, because, the other text messages that I had sent you, says, my PCP says I'm getting worse
Mhm.
and I need to go to the ER and force them to start treatment. So, he didn't say that.
No.
Right.
He doesn't even know that you have cancer. You told him that you did
Mhm.
because CAMC said you did.
And then he tries to get records and he
Can't get 'em.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they're
Well,
not
it's
there.
just like everything with Mike. Well, who said that? Well, Natalie said that. Well, who said that about Mike? He had this or he had that. Well, that's what Natalie said.
Yep.
So then you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Certain
this is nuts.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then it says Stephanie says, "Okay, love you too. Keep us updated. We'll do anything you need." And then so this one's on January 13th of 2019. So this is backing up
Yeah.
before Michael. It says, I have some nursing contracts available. This is kind of getting into the contract talk, folks. This says, I have some nursing contracts available. If you want to ever invest in as a consultant, maybe quit MedExpress altogether, spend more time with the kiddos. Our Sunday school was canceled today. Prayed for your mom's upcoming on Tuesday. Stephanie said, yes, I would love to have the info for the contracts. Thank you for the prayers. And next page, Stephanie says, or Natalie says, okay, I'll get you that today. Stephanie says, okay, sounds great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Natalie says, I just want to see you happy and able to stay home more and forget those old Med Express peeps. And then Stephanie says, oh, thanks. Gee, such a, I can't read the bottom of it, but I imagine it's like, you're such a good friend. Natalie says, here's two today. I know you're waiting for till June, but you can have or consult them. And it says suture supplies cost $18.35, return $39.50. So it literally has like, okay, you pay X, you get X. Bandages and gauze wraps costs $21.04, return $45.70. Both are 21 day. And then Stephanie says, I don't even know what I've got coming. Cry face laughter.
Yeah.
When did you cut off contact officially?
Well, it was after they come in and raided, and then I went to her house that night. Like I told you, she mentioned that they took the insulin and all that stuff. And then, I kind of thought that was weird because I was like, why is she so concerned about that? You know what I mean? And then a couple of days later, my friend called me again and she was like, so my daughter was down at the lake at Glade. She was talking about Natalie's house being raided. And somebody was down there that heard her on the phone and said, I'll tell you what happened. She filled her husband full of insulin and killed him. So she tells me this and I'm like, because like everything starts rewinding back.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, just like light bulbs going off. Like, okay, she told me about insulin at the dish were in those supplements.
Mm-hmm.
She then told me,
Which wasn't brought up in court, was it?
no,
Yeah.
none of the
meeting, no.
after
Yeah.
talks were ever brought up. I wanted them to.
I mean, that's
because I wanted to get that out there,
Sure.
to, in court. And then again, after the raid, when she said that about them getting the insulin, and I was like, oh my gosh! Like then I tell my friend, well, she had said, I said, remember she said this and this, and she was like, that's why I'm telling you, because I had told my friend that she said those things to me, and I can't say like why, I guess per se, but they told me to keep contact with her.
Sure.
And they told me not to cut off communication because, just to act like everything's normal right now. So I did for a while. Maybe a month after that. And then somebody ruined it because somebody put up a Facebook meme and tagged me in it.
Oh no.
And it was directed towards her, but they didn't mean to tag me. They meant to tag another Stephanie that was involved.
So it was just by chance.
It really was.
And he ended up messaging me and he was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to tag you in that. That was meant for somebody else. Well, she saw that on Facebook and she's like, well, so now I know where you stand. You're not my friend. You're with that group. And I was like, oh, no, like I wasn't supposed to get that tag. Like that was for somebody else. And I said, I even have a message from him saying like you wasn't supposed to tag me in that. So that kind of
and it's not the police, I swear.
Yeah. And so that kind of like she quit communicating with me.
Did you contact Bledsoe and be like, hey, funny thing?
Yeah, I told him. And he was like, it's okay.
She was never going to say anything.
Right.
So by August, when she's talking to the media,
Well, she's in recovery
you're
mode.
not talking to her anymore by then.
No. No. That's why then it was so difficult because I'm like, okay. So I think when you make her mad, then she starts the blame game and she's going after. So I think like she got mad at me. She saw that post and then she started like trying to go after me and John, like having her lawyer, Robert Dunlap, say on the news in the paper that she had so-and-so there all day.
Yeah, trooper and a PA. Like I said, buddy.
She had her medical provider there is what it basically came out.
Yeah, you borderline have slander case there of like, man, you know how much damage this caused me in my life? You know what I mean?
And I'm like, I was there as a friend, not as a medical provider. For to be there as a medical provider, I mean, I would have been prepared to go there and check him out. Like, I'm going to check him out. Like, we're going to get some things on him and see what's going on.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the mindset that day.
No, the way you laid it out makes total sense. Natalie says, I have a contact today, 75,839 return, 92,045. So saying, putting in this much, we're returning this much. Once you keep flipping, hopefully we will get there. Stephanie said, OMG, that is crazy. I wish I could do that one. Saying, man, that sounds like a lot of return there. I'd love to get in on Natalie. Let's go. Natalie says, see, that would pay to take a whole year off. So put that in perspective. Just constantly selling. But this one's February 25th. So this is...
Yeah, I was trying to find like actual...
Okay.
How she would send the contracts.
Well, look at those, what it says about the chemo.
Gotcha.
I finish my chemo.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's the other reason I sent you that one too, is because the chemo was in there. And see how that would tie into like...
Yeah, like, I'm doing chemo. It's difficult. Also,
But I'm working on stuff,
It says, woke up rough, may not make lunch today. Let's do it Friday when I finish my chemo.
When was that one?
February 25th.
Okay, so
Post death.
Yeah.
It can be a celebratory lunch. Nothing to flip yet today, but here is your list. Lozenges and OTC IHS 2034 return, 3,024, 15 days. So she's just making this stuff up. I'm sorry. This is crazy. What else we got? Where was I? Okay, moving forward. Oh, that's it. That's the last one. So, Stephanie, it's evident. Lady Cray. I think it'll help people actually seeing. Of course, the prosecution had so much to present, and there's so much of this stuff that I think people need to also add on top because it all matters. But final thoughts. I think we can try to put this to bed, and hopefully it'll help you all. I don't know. I appreciate you coming here. I hope we remain friends. Obviously, play some video games. Me and John's talking vintage Nintendo and arcade games. So, but any final thoughts?
No, we enjoy your content.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for being here.
And you did a great job. When I went back and looked at your page, I was like, dang, she was keeping everybody updated.
Yeah, because I'll be honest with you, the media has not been very kind to us over the last few years.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm really sorry because I know our paper was kind of part of that. It was before my time, but I know how hard it was for you guys.
Why I refused to talk to the paper even at that time. And then once I realized there was someone new, because I'll be honest, the person before I'm not fond of, still not fond of her. And just because my take is, if you want me to talk, don't slander me first so that I'll reach out to correct that. That's not to wait to get to people. And that's what was happening. And so I lost a lot of respect for that. If just don't say anything until you have the right content. That's not how you're going to get people to reach out to you. Like, in fact, I'm never going to talk to you.
And I was going to say, I was trying to be mindful because obviously every witness has their own. The defense, those witnesses were skewed her way. You guys obviously had a lot more truth backing you, but you were skewed to, wanting to help put Natalie away. And I tried to be mindful of that while also fact checking as much as I could.
Oh, yeah.
The text messages were great to say, that you can't really refute that.
Yeah. You got to let the facts be the foundation and that's what Josie does so well. It's like, okay, well, these are where the facts are leading now. And she's real good at keeping her opinions out of things. That's what I'm for.
Well, you did do that. But when you go back and look, just the things, you didn't say either way.
It's kind of humorous.
But some
of the things you pick up, I pick up.
Well, because you're in there and you're hearing all of it and you're seeing things for real. So even you trying to be a mutual person, you still knew the truth and you saw the evidence.
Mhm, I did.
And read that, you know, and so that said a lot. And you could see in your tone that you knew that, and that's the way you felt, but like you didn't say it and you didn't have an opinion.
Yeah.
But you're like, okay, any 3-year-old could figure this out. You know,
Right,
like
right.
It's all there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Well, oh, sorry, Siri. Turned on Siri. Well, thank you all. I guess we can go ahead and let people know that there are plenty more interviews your way. I hope you all learned a lot from this one. I know I did. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to Creepalachia on YouTube. We're on Apple and Spotify for the audio only crowd. Be sure to leave a review there. Tell me about your experience. So thank you all for coming in. And everyone else, be sure to remember, long live Appalachia.